the Artistic Director of Alchemy Theatre. Thank you all so much for being here for Night 2 of the New Arts Festival 2025. We appreciate you being here on such a nice day outside. We do have, as you can see, some space heaters around. As with anything, all of our heating in the entire building, now that we own it, has broken. So we just took over ownership of the building in December, and literally all the heaters broke in January. So it's going great. If you know any HVAC specialists that will do some stuff for free for nonprofit, please let us know. So just be aware that there are some heaters and some strips of the cords around that you might trip over. Don't trip over them. If you've never been here before, the bathrooms are down the hall. Follow the lights. We've got concessions across the hall. There will be a couple breaks as we set up different sections. But I will allow Stephen Vance, who is our curator of the New Arts Festival, to tell you more about what you will see tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. And Mr. Vance.
Thank you all for being here. If you've never been to one of our New Works Festival before, this is our 4th annual New Works Festival. Thanks to our relationship with Ian Nolte, we have continued to receive short films each year, and we've just turned Saturday night of our festival into a film night. So what you're going to see tonight is you're going to see 5 different short films read out loud, and as you can tell, many of the authors are here tonight, so you can hear and see what your work looks like, just to see if it works. One of the things that we do to torture the authors afterwards is we're going to bring them up here and allow you to volley questions at them and any comments you might have about it. So if you have notes and you would like to start taking notes now, you can do it right after I get done with this introduction. We're very glad with the partnership that we have, not only with Ian, but with Marshall University as well. And we couldn't be more excited about that. And a Marshall alum and sometimes adjunct and guy doing grad school work somewhere, our artistic director, Mike Murdock, we're going to anchor the evening with a pilot that he has for a television show that he's been working on. I'll let him talk more about that in his defense later, whenever you get to volley questions at him. We'll take a short break here somewhere. We'll figure all that out as we go along. But let me invite to the stage so we can get started the cast of Cottontail. Come on down. Cottontail is a short film. I think I'm stalling a lot, by Isa McMullen, who I believe is sitting right there. Enjoy Cottontail.
Interior, grocery store, produce aisle, day. Fluorescent lights hum loudly overhead. The colors of fruits and vegetables in their displays are vibrant. A mousy young woman chews on her cheek as she stalks garlic. This is Harriet, 24. Her hair is pulled up into a ponytail. She wears khakis, a polo embossed with a store logo on the breast. A dainty gold cross hangs from her neck. She pulls her hair out from under her necklace. The clasp is wrapped in frayed, previously caught hairs. Suddenly, she jerks forward, clutching her abdomen. She lets out a groan. She steadies herself on the tray in front of her. Title card, Cottontail. Interior, grocery store, break room. Later that day. Lockers line the walls of the small room. Other employees in the same uniform as Harriet put things in and take things out of lockers as they chat amongst each other. Harriet sits in one of the few scattered chairs bent down, untying her pristine sneakers. She places them in her open locker in exchange for a very worn pair of similar shoes. With her changed shoes, she pops up from the chair, gathers her belongings, and dons a puffy winter coat. As she begins to leave, a scrawny, freckle-covered redhead boy walks up to her. He is Scott.
Harriet! Hi! I didn't know if you'd left yet. Wanted to see if you're feeling better.
Harriet steps back in surprise.
Oh, Scott, hi. You scared me.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to grab you before you left for the day.
Harriet waits for him to continue, saying nothing.
So, yeah, I just wanted to see if you'd ever want to grab a drink with me sometime. If you're not sick anymore.
I'm getting better, but I told you last time we can't. We're coworkers.
She lightly shrugs and begins moving past him.
You said that last time.
Harriet is almost out the door.
Because we're still coworkers.
She holds her belongings to her chest and pushes past Scott. Interior/exterior city bus day. There are very few riders around Harriet, who sit alone looking forward with headphones tucked in her ears. The bus comes to a stop, sighing as the door opens. An older man boards. Surveying his fellow riders, he lands on Harriet and makes his way over to her. Without a word, he begins to sit next to her, forcing her to scoot against the window to be sat on. He looks at her. She keeps her eyes forward, avoiding his gaze. She breathes deeply and swallows. Interior, Harriet's house, evening. Walking through the front door, Harriet kicks off her shoes onto a shoe rack. She peels her coat and tosses it over the back of an ornate armchair. This house is too old for her. The things in it have been collected over years, much longer than she has been alive. It is a museum of someone else. Clutter fills every surface. She shuffles across the dingy carpet into the small kitchen. There is a microwave crammed onto the counter full of appliances and mail. In front of it sits an urn. With the frozen meal in one hand, she moves the urn out of the way, opens the door, and slides in the dinner.
Excuse me, Dad.
With the now steaming frozen dinner, Harriet sits on the couch, turning on the TV to a bright, blaring show, and begins mindlessly eating. Interior, Harriet's bathroom, morning. Harriet is in a matching pink pajama set, hunched over the toilet, puking. It is violent. She retches even as nothing else comes out. Standing up, she groans, clutching her stomach, and flushes. She shuts the lid and sits on it, releasing a deep sigh. Interior, grocery store, bathroom, day. Match day. Harriet sits on the toilet, hunched over. She is in her work uniform. She gathers toilet paper around her hand and wipes. She looks at the paper confused. There is blood and something else. She uses her pointer finger. She investigates, uncovering a clump of white fur. There is a pounding knock on the door. She quickly flushes, stands, and begins washing her hands. The pounding continues, louder now.
Come on, man, hurry up! I gotta piss!
Harriet dries her hands on her shirt and unlocks the door. Before she can even open it, a woman bursts through and pushes past her to immediately sit on the toilet. She begins peeing as Harriet is in the doorway.
Whew, sometimes I gotta go so bad it feels like I'm coming when I finally do.
Harriet is frozen.
You just gotta watch, shut the door!
Harriet obliges. Interior, grocery store, produce aisle, day. Her manager, an older gray woman with clipboard, surveys fruits, making notes. Harriet makes her way over to her.
Angela?
Angela looks up from her task and immediately back down.
Harriet, how can I help you?
I was wondering if I could leave a little early. I just don't feel good.
Did you finish inventory?
Yes I did.
You can leave, but I'll need a doctor's note this time.
Harriet did not expect that answer, but swiftly heads to the back of the store. Interior, walk-in clinic, next day. Harriet sits in a waiting room, headphones in, tapping her foot. Harsh lighting overhead washes her out. The floors and walls are all dingy white. A man behind her raises his voice at the young woman working behind the pharmacy counter.
Harriet Peters.
Harriet takes out her headphones, gathers her things, and makes her way to the young male nurse.
How are you today, hun?
I'm okay.
Interior, exam room, moments later. Harriet sits on the exam table, swinging her legs slightly.
Alright, so you've been experiencing nausea, vomiting, spotting, cramps, and weight gain. Any other concerns today?
Harriet shakes her head no.
Okay, I do have to ask, is there any chance you could be pregnant?
No.
We'll have to do a urine test just in case.
He scribbles on his notepad, rolling his chair over to a cabinet. He pulls out a clear cup and writes on it.
Okay, bathroom is down the hall. Use this cup, put it on the shelf in there, and when you're back, put this on.
He pulls out a paper hospital gown.
Then the doctor will be in to see you shortly.
Interior, exam room, moments later. Harriet is on the table again in the paper hospital gown. The paper below her and on her loudly crinkle when she shifts. There's a knock on the door and it's immediately opened. A middle-aged man comes in, followed by the nurse.
Hello, Harriet. I hear you're not feeling very well.
He gets hand sanitizer from the automatic dispenser on the wall and rubs it in.
I hope we can get you feeling better today. My hands may be a little cold.
He begins to listen to heart with his stethoscope and uses his fingers to examine her lymph nodes. He pulls back and looks at her face.
So, your urine test did come back positive for pregnancy.
Harriet furrows her brow.
That's not possible. Absolutely not possible.
Okay. Do you need something like a sexual assault exam? A rape kit?
No, that's not. No.
Harriet stands, putting her shoes on. She doesn't bother to take the gown off.
Hold on. We're here to help you, honey. Just wait a minute.
I don't need your help.
She exits, leaving the nurse and doctor with each other. Interior, Harriet's bathroom, later. Harriet sits on the toilet in her pink pajamas with the lid closed. She looks at the sink, which is filled with 5 pregnancy tests, all positive. She is staring into space with tear-stained cheeks. The boxes they came from litter the floor around her. Her face twists into a look of pain. She stands, lifts the lid, and throws up. She spits, steps back, and plucks pieces of white fur off of her tongue. She rolls it in her finger, looking in disbelief. Interior/exterior, city bus, day. Harriet sits in the same bus seat as before. She is in a light sweater. The world outside is in the bloom of spring. Her abdomen is much bigger, almost a full term. The bus stops and an older man from before climbs on. He smiles at Harriet. He quickly looks her up and down. As his eyes catching on her stomach, his grin drops. He averts his gaze and sits in the closest seat next to him, far from Harriet. Interior, Harriet's house, later. Harriet enters the front door holding plastic shopping bags. Most of the home's decors remain the same, but the clutter has been cleaned out of her father's urn has been placed in the center of the mantel. She waddles into the back of the house, turning down a hallway. Interior, nursery, moments later. Harriet places the bags in a chair and observes the room. There is a half-assembled crib and baby gate still packaged and the wall decor scattered around. A package of diapers poke out of one of the shopping bags. The other is full of powdered formula. Hanging off the side of the crib is an old, well-loved baby blanket with the name Harriet embroidered on it. She places a hand on the blanket, feeling its texture. With a tired smile, she turns to leave. Interior, grocery store, produce aisle, day. The fluorescent lights hum as Angela announces something unintelligible over the PA system. Harriet stocks every shade of sweet peppers in materialistic rows. She grunts, leaning over the vegetables to pluck a moldy pepper that had been missed from the farthest row back. Pushing back with it in hand, she suddenly winces in pain, drops it, and curls forward.
Oh, no, not yet.
She lets out a muffled scream. Her knees buckle slightly, and she grabs the shelf for support.
God damn it!
She begins to slide down slowly to the floor, supporting herself on any shelves and carts near her. Shoppers begin noticing. Now fully laying on the floor, Harriet cries out in pain. The crowd begins to gather around her. Everyone looks to the people near them expectantly.
Someone call 911, right?
Please help me! Someone help! It isn't my due date yet!
Scott emerges from behind the crowd. The color drains from his face. He makes eye contact with Harriet. They are both terrified. He pushes back through the crowd and disappears. Harriet writhes in pain, and as the crowd goes but only watches, no one helps. Scott reappears with Angela.
Oh, mother of God.
Harriet hits her eyes.
Angela, it's happening.
Oh, okay, I'm calling 911.
She pulls out her phone.
No, now! It's happening now! I can't wait for an ambulance.
God, okay, after 3 kids, I got this.
Nodding her head to encourage herself, Angela rolls up her sleeves and pushes past people, making her way to Harriet's side.
It'll be okay, hon, I promise. Lay back. We gotta get these pants off.
Angela takes her cardigan off, laying under Harriet's head as she lays her down. Close up. Harriet cries silently while doing paced breathing exercises. 3 seconds in, 7 seconds out. 3 seconds in.
All right, listen to me, Harriet. You need to start pushing. This baby needs to get out. I'm gonna count to 3 and you push, okay?
Okay.
1, 2, 3, push, now!
Harriet strains and screams in pain. The crowd, still gathered around, is murmuring encouragements.
Good job, I see something. One more big push. 1, 2, 3.
Harriet strains and screams again.
You did it, honey.
Angela gasps quietly. The crowd collectively steps back. Someone yelps and others swears under their breath. Harriet sits up, now face to face with Angela. She looks down to see her baby. She is met with something wiggling and covered in clumped fur and amniotic fluids with huge brown eyes. She is met with a bunny, her baby. Long beat. She slowly smiles and reaches for her newborn. Taking them from Angela, she wipes her baby's face. Their nose twitches in response.
Harriet, I don't. It's so perfect.
She smiles at the onlookers. They only give horrified looks in return. She leans in close and kisses her baby's nose. She speaks to only them.
You're perfect, and you're mine.
The crowd continues to murmur in confusion and disgust. People begin disappearing, leaving Harriet and her baby intertwined in the middle of it all. The end.
That was Cottontail by Issa McMullen. We'll talk about that very shortly. Next up is Can't Start a Fire Without a Spark by Samantha Phalen. With that cast, let's start to come on down. Sam, I hope you appreciate this casting of Bruno. I chose it specifically for you.
Oh, beautiful.
Come on down, Bruno.
We don't talk about Bruno.
This is Can't Start a Fire Without a Spark by Samantha Phalen.
Let's not do that.
Interior St. James Performing Arts Center Auditorium, night. A performance of Oedipus Rex is reaching its conclusion. At the back of the stage stand the members of the Greek chorus, watching the spectacle unfolding at the front of the stage. All of them are dressed in ragged clothes. At the front of the stage stand Paul, in more regal attire. He is acting as Creon. Next to him, covering his eyes with his hands in equally regal wear, is Lance as Oedipus. Their performance is almost unbearably over the top.
I am a thing of God. Oh, sorry. I am a thing of God. The more then will he grant thy prayer. Thou givest thine oath.
Angle on the audience, only about halfway occupied by yawning patrons. Those whose eyes aren't glazed over or who aren't asleep are fiddling with their phones. That is, save for one gentleman sitting directly in the middle of the audience. He's quite literally sitting on the edge of his seat. There's a smile on the man's face that makes it unclear whether he's truly enamored or about to start laughing. Angle on the actors on stage.
I see no light, and seeing not, I may not swear. Then take me hence, I care not.
Close up the man's face as he begins to mouth the words along with the actors.
Go in peace, and give these children all. Ah, no, take not away my daughters.
Angles on the actors on stage. Paul stands at the head of the stage while Lance has now sunk to the ground, still clawing at his eyes.
Seek not to be master more. Did not thy masteries of old forsake thee when the end was near?
Angle on the man. His leg bounces excitedly. There's a hungry look in his eyes. As the chorus recites the next lines, the man jumps up from his chair and slides down the aisle, darting out the auditorium doors in the back.
Ye citizens of Thebes, behold, 'tis Oedipus that passeth here, who read the riddle word of death, and mightiest stood of mortal men, and fortune loved him, and the folk that saw him turned and looked again.
Cut to exterior St. James Performing Arts Center back parking lot, night. 4 people walk out of the back door to the Performing Arts Center. The 2 leading at the front are Janine and Denise, chattering excitedly with one another. Janine, while clearly younger, has on old age makeup that is smudged as she's taken off her costume. Denise, on the other hand, is dressed sleek and professional. Taking up the rear are the familiar faces of Paul and Lance, now out of costume. We now see clearly that Lance is a handsome gentleman of about 40 and is carrying himself with an annoying cockiness. Paul, on the other hand, is slightly older and not quite as handsome. He looks exhausted.
I think this is the first night I didn't screw up any of my lines.
It's always closing night.
Would have been nice of you to get them sooner.
Excuse me.
All 4 of them whirl around. The man from before has appeared appeared by the door they have just exited. The group doesn't catch on to the fact that he wasn't there when they first walk out, but the audience might. This is not a fact that should have any excess attention drawn to it. The man has the same ominous smile on his face from before. As he speaks, he takes the hand of each actor and shakes it. Denise reacts with surprise, Paul with disdain, Janine bashfully, and Lance with a flattered expression.
Brilliant show, everyone. What passion. What drive. I must have seen this play a million times over and you still had me on the edge of my seat.
He does a double take at Denise. He waggles a finger at her playfully.
And you must be Madame Director?
How'd you know?
My dear, you simply have that aura about you. You ooze the aura of a creative force. Your mind is too expansive for the stage, so it is your job to guide others.
Paul mouths ooze with disdain.
Ooze?
Lance shoulders his way between the man and Denise. He has put on a businesslike grin and offers his hand to the man for a second time.
Wonderful to meet a fan. Lance Thibodeau, you might have seen some of my other work in Much Ado About Nothing, or more recently, The Menechme.
Doesn't strike me.
The man not unpleasantly ignores Lance's extended hand and targets his attention at Janine.
And what a lovely Jocasta. That final monologue just tore at me, positively devastating.
Oh, thank you.
Can we get going? I don't want to be stuck here any longer than I have to be.
Jesus, Paul, don't be rude. It won't kill you to take a few minutes to talk to. Sorry I didn't catch your name.
The man considers this for a moment. Finally, an idea hits him.
I think Bruno sounds nice.
Janine laughs. Paul and Lance look less amused.
Am I correct in assuming we're heading out for some closing night festivity?
You've got some good intuition there, Bruno.
We're all going to Paul's house for a sort of cast party.
Lance once again pushes himself between Bruno and the women. He seems desperate for a compliment Bruno has yet to give.
Why don't you join us?
I'm sorry.
Why not? Bruno here enjoyed the show so much, couldn't hurt to get to know him a little better.
Come on, I think it's a fun idea.
We'll all be there.
We can get some feedback on the show, get to know our audience better. Think of it as a professional meeting with alcohol. Lots of alcohol.
I do like the sound of that.
Paul looks between the four of them. He is visibly less than pleased. His eyes land on Bruno, whose expression is unreadable. Something is off, but Paul can't put his finger on it.
Fuck. Fine. But only because I want to drink, and I'm not doing it alone, and this is just sad.
Oh, I beg to differ.
Cut to exterior, Paul's patio, night. The group sit in folding chairs around a fire pit on Paul's back patio, lurking just outside of a forest at the edge of the property. All of them have been drinking profusely and continue to do so. They're feeling loose, but continue to drink from various cans and bottles. They sit around the fire in a circle in the following order: Bruno, Denise, Paul, Lance, and Janine.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant show. One of my favorites, really done masterfully.
Bruno takes a large drink from the bottle of wine he is holding.
Strange man, that Sophocles. Very, how is it you call it now? Freudian, that's it, Freudian. Or I guess Freud was very Sophoclean. Either way, the strange ones, those are the ones to keep your eye on. They go places.
Lance finishes off his drink in one swig and leans forward in his chair, eyeing the man pointedly, challenging him.
You a big theater guy?
Close shot, Bruno's face, his eyes narrow just slightly. The firelight casts an eerie glow.
You might say so.
Bruno breaks eye contact, only to take a large swig of wine and to offer the bottle to Denise, who takes it and takes a drink of her own. Close shot, Lance's face. His smile wavers, but he tries to recover.
I should have guessed.
Oedipus Rex doesn't really strike a chord with a normal audience.
Denise's happy expression quickly falls. Janine sets her drink aside and claps her hands to diffuse whatever situation is spawning.
Oh, but you made such a lovely crayon.
I made a lovely Marvin Gardens, too, but something had to give so we could do Denise's pick.
Denise swirls her drink diffidently.
Thought a change of pace would be nice, is all.
Paul sighs. Denise continues sipping on the wine with increasing ferocity.
Sure.
Janine waves her hand dismissively. She addresses Bruno, who has been watching this with bored eyes.
Either way, we're very glad you enjoyed the show. And like Lance said, we're glad you could join our little cast party tonight.
The man hums, then announces.
This is becoming a bore.
Suddenly, he leaps from his chair. The fire wavers threateningly with the sudden movement. Both Paul and Lance jolt. Bruno points at Denise, then bows cordially.
You, madame. Your phone, if you would.
Denise points at herself, then looks to Janine for reassurance. When Janine, with a huge grin, gestures for her to obey Bruno, Denise giggles, tickled, and digs her phone out of her pocket. She hands it to him. Over the shoulder, inexplicably, as Bruno looks at the phone screen, it bends to his will with no physical input. It unlocks, opens a music app, and begins playing something akin to Bruce Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark. With a triumphant laugh, he tosses the phone onto his chair.
It's been killing me trying to find out exactly what we were missing. Music! It's always the music. People are so protective of their precious silence these days.
He thrusts his hand out to Janine.
Dance with me, my dear.
Oh, I couldn't.
Oh, but you could. It would be incredibly easy, I would think.
Janine giggles like a schoolgirl, as does Denise. In one swig, she finishes the rest of the liquid courage and abandons the bottle on the patio. Close shot, the wine bottle tumbles through the fencing surrounding the patio and falls to the grass below. Small weeds, vines, more like, grow from the grass and wrap hungrily around the bottle. Janine jumps up from her own seat and takes Bruno's hand. He twirls her around and catches her in his arms. The two of them and Denise are all laughing. The music is blaring. It's all quite lovely. That is, until Paul pushes past Janine and Bruno to turn the music off. While stumbling, he bumps into the man whose face quickly darkens.
I have neighbors. And a wife upstairs who doesn't know I have guests over. And I'd like to keep it that way.
Come on, Paul. Don't be a dick. You have been a buzzkill all night. We closed a show tonight. Live a little.
Yeah, live a little.
Lance selects to play peacekeeper, but in a way that makes it clear his side is with Paul.
Look, it's time to settle down. We were having a nice conversation. Let's just get back to it.
You were having a nice conversation. I want to dance.
Denise takes her phone in her hand and turns the music back on, which has now changed to something like the B-52's Love Shack. Janine squeals at delight, but it quickly turns into an uncontrollable high giggle. Denise laughs with her. They hold hands and begin dancing nonsensically, hardly in time with the music at all. Their arms flail, their heads whip, and their legs kick in wild, drunken mania. The firelight sets them ablaze. Bruno watches, intrigued.
Fucking ridiculous.
Come on! She waves to the man, but fails to notice he's not joining. Close up, Bruno's eyes, which keep flicking side to side, watching the two women dancing and then the men calculating.
Look, guys, that's enough. I'm putting my foot down.
Stumbling, Paul makes a dash for her phone, which Denise is still holding. In one quick movement, Denise lets go of Janine with her other hand and swats at Paul, catching him with her nails. There's a wild look in her eyes, almost inhuman. Bruno laughs as Paul holds his hand close to his chest. Blood drips down his shirt into the patio below.
What the hell, Denise? What's wrong with you?
Paul whirls on the man.
You gave them something, didn't you? Get out! Get the fuck out, all of you!
Paul pounds Bruno's chest with the hand that is bleeding, smearing his shirt with blood. Bruno doesn't react. Rather, he touches the damp crimson blood with 2 fingers and lifts them up to the moon, letting the light catch them. He smiles, reaches over, and squishes Paul's face affectionately, wiping the blood back on him.
There's something seriously wrong with you.
All I did was accept your invitation. You're lucky I've tolerated the disrespect this long. By my calculations, you broke the laws of Xenia hours ago.
Lance pushes past the two of them. Denise and Janine have stopped dancing and are now eyeing the men like tigers circling their prey. Lance is attempting to check on them, but they only acknowledge him with hungry stares.
Actors had so much more respect for each other in my day. So much more respect for me. It's assholes like you that remind me why I tend to stay out of the theater sphere these days.
What the hell are you talking about?
Bruno lifts his chest to the sky and breathes in the night air. His hands are by his sides with his palms facing up. His eyes flutter shut. He begins reciting.
Young women, I've brought you the men who laughed at you, who ridiculed my rights. Now, punish them.
For a moment, no one moves. Bruno's eyes flip back open. He looks to the men who are staring at him with dumbfounded fear.
Euripides, the Bacchae, I thought you were supposed to be theater folk. Oh, city Dionysia, how I miss thee.
He drops his stance, sighs. Paul and Lance look to each other, then to Bruno in horror. There is a mystical glimmer in Bruno's eyes that betrays something far beyond your average party guest. He has a sudden moment of realization.
I'm bored of this mortal moniker. Surely, I am Dionysus, revered son of the immortal Zeus and the mortal Semele. I only wish I could say it was a pleasure to have met him. Ah well. Do what you will, madams.
Janine and Denise, like attack dogs given a release command, pounce at Paul and Lance, knocking them both to the deck. We cannot see the men save for their flailing arms and legs as they try to escape from beneath the two women. Dionysus watches as Janine and Denise tear ravenously at the flesh of the men with their bare hands. Blood begins to pool on the deck, shreds of Paul and Lance's clothes fly into the air and fall either into the fire or the puddles. Beneath the carnage, muting Paul and Lance's screams, plays something reminiscent of Blondie's Call Me. The fire burns vibrantly behind them, almost threatening to set the whole place ablaze. Close shot, Janine whips up with a triumphant scream. On her finger sit Lance's eyes, plucked straight from his sockets. Close shot, Dionysus laughs, as if he were watching the funniest play he had ever seen. Close shot, the wine bottle, now completely engulfed in vines, an arm ripped violently from the socket lands next to it. Soon Paul and Lance's screams die down, replaced by the horrible, shrieking laugh screams of Denise and Janine. Even so, their sounds die down too, and they're left gasping for air as they smear the blood on their hands, on their faces, and bodies. They are too far gone to realize what a terrible ordeal they've just dealt. Dionysus steps through the carnage, stepping on severed body parts, soaking his sandals in blood, but he pays it no mind. Weakly, Denise and Janine reach delicately for his legs, his ankles worshipful. There is an awe in their eyes mixed with the madness they have been blessed with. They fall to the patio in a deep bow. Blood soaks all three of them. Dionysus, in a twist of irony, seems the most level-headed of them all.
Brilliant show.
Cut to interior Paul's living room, morning. Jessica, Paul's middle-aged wife, steps into the living room, still in her robe, rubbing her eyes. Through the windows, the sunrise is peeking over the horizon. She looks around the room for him.
Paul! Paul! Did you come home last night?
There's no response. She sighs, the almost delicate facade falls.
Fucking theater people.
Jessica, still half asleep, approaches the sliding glass door leading to the patio out back. She opens it, and as she steps out, yawns and stretches, taking in the morning air. Exterior, Paul's patio, morning, a horrible squelch sounds out from beneath her feet. Disgust immediately crosses her face, and she makes the mistake of looking down. Her slippers are standing in a puddle of her husband's blood. Angle on Denise and Janine, dragging their fingers through the blood, drawing pictures in it like children. Paul and Lance's bodies lie all around them. They giggle and gossip to each other as though nothing is wrong. Dionysus is nowhere to be seen. Close up, Denise looks up to Jessica and smiles. Close up, Jessica's eyes are wide with horror. Her face has gone pale. She hyperventilates for a second, but then manages to get out a terrible scream that echoes through the backyard and the forest beyond. Blackout.
That was Can't Start a Fire Without a Spark by Samantha Phalen. We'll definitely talk about that more in a minute. We brought in some psychiatric experts. Next up, we have Birthday Candles by Hannah Grace. Cast for that will come on down. For something completely different. And you can just hold it down whenever you're done. This is Birthday Candles by Hannah Grace.
Over black, we hear the sound of children laughing and the sound of someone taking deep breaths. Exterior, front porch, day. Elaine, 38, swipes nervously at a stain that sits in the middle of her faded tie-dye shirt. She looks up at herself in the glass pane of the screen door to the house. She looks at her reflection. Her eyes move from the top of her head down to her beat-up Converse. She switches hands. She moves the gift bag into her other hand. Her now free hand reaches up to smooth back a ruffled piece of hair that stands on her head. Her eyes settle back on her face that barely shows in the glass. She practices an awkward smile as she says,
Happy birthday, Tristan.
she extends her arm out in front of herself, holding out a small blue gift bag. Her eyes squint back at her reflection. Her arm falls to her side in a huff. The blue gift bag gently swings back and forth. She scoffs at herself.
You sound so dumb, Elaine.
With her free hand, she wipes her hand down her face in frustration. She sighs.
Just gotta go in there, Elle.
She takes a deep breath and reaches for the screen door handle. She pulls it open and stares at the white large front door that is still closed. Elaine hesitates to knock. She reaches up to knock on the door when suddenly the door swings open from the inside. It reveals Hannah, 22. Elaine's younger sister stands in the doorway. Hannah has her red hair pulled back and wears a long casual maxi dress. She smiles ear to ear at Elaine.
Elle, you made it! I knew you would come. You look great.
Elaine looks at her a little stunned. Her hand comes down to her side as she nods.
Hey, little sister, can I come in?
Hannah nods and moves out of the doorway. She holds the door open for Elaine. Elaine carefully steps into the foyer. Interior, foyer, day. Elaine steps into the house. It is brightly lit with party decorations covering from the ceiling to the walls to the floors. Kids run around them in the small space and into the next room. Elaine leans back and holds the blue gift bag up away from them. Hannah scolds the children.
Stop running the house!
Elaine flinches at Hannah's loud voice as Elaine shakes her head at the children. Hannah looks over at Elaine. She sees her cringed posture.
It's gonna be okay, Elle. Just follow me.
Hannah pats her on the arm. Elaine smiles nervously and follows behind her. Interior, dining room, day. Elaine follows Hannah into the dining room. The room is decorated with shiny plastic letters that spell happy birthday. Other signs reveal a theme. Space aliens. There is tiny spaceship-shaped confetti on the tablecloth, among the other things. People lounge about the dinner table. People notice Hannah and Elaine. A few wave casually. Some stare curiously at Elaine. Elaine shuffles awkwardly on her feet back and forth. Hannah walks up to the people at the table.
Hey, Aunt Melissa, want to say hi to Elaine?
Melissa, 57, sits at the table. She picks up her coffee cup and takes a long sip. She looks at Elaine over Hannah's shoulder. She studies Elaine's anxious expression. She scoffs and sits the cup down.
Hi, Elaine.
Elaine nods and waves at her.
Hi, Aunt Melissa.
Elaine purses her lips into a flat line. Melissa, her eyes on Elaine, holds a fake smile.
Nice of you to come. How's your,
Hannah coughs exaggeratedly. She cuts off Melissa. Hannah picks up a red Solo cup that sits on the table near a punch bowl. She takes a few quick sips.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Dry throat.
Elaine looks to the ground for a moment. Melissa, still sitting at the table, just nods.
Look, Tristan's talking to Granny Helen. Let's go say hi.
She offers to Elaine. Elaine freezes. She looks over. Helen, 73, sits in a rocking chair as Tristan, 17, stands by with his arms folded, taking a few glances at Elaine. Elaine's lips turn up in a small smile, and Tristan looks away from her.
I don't know. I don't want to interrupt Granny.
Hannah looks over at Tristan and Helen, then back at Elaine. She shrugs with a reassuring smile.
You could still take a chance to talk to him, you know?
Elaine shakes her head, and her hand tightens around the gift bag.
I don't think I'm ready yet.
Melissa scoffs to herself. Elaine looks over to her. Her jaw clenches as tears well up in her eyes. Hannah notices the tension and goes to grab Elaine's arm, who quickly turns on her heel. Interior kitchen, day. Elaine stumbles into the kitchen. The kitchen is all lit by yellowing lights. It is quite a mess inside. Bags and bags of groceries lay on the counters. On the island sits a large birthday cake with birthday candles laying nearby. Elaine walks over to the sink. She drops the bag on the counter as her hands grip the sides of the sink. She takes a long breath. She closes her eyes and tries to steady her breath. Behind her, two people enter the kitchen. She is unaware till she hears someone clear their throat. Elaine glances over her shoulder. It's Melanie, 64, Elaine's mother, and along beside her is Elaine's stepdad, Mitchell, 61. Melanie gasps and rushes over to Elaine. Elaine huffs and leans back. Her palms still hold the sink to steady herself.
Oh, Elaine, you're here. I am so happy to see you, honey. You look healthy.
She squeezes Elaine's shoulders between her hands. Melanie studies Elaine's appearance. She crooks her head back and forth as she stares.
You finally gained some weight back, huh? You're getting back to old you. What you think, Mitchell?
Mitchell lingers about the kitchen. He ignores Melanie and Elaine. He wanders over to the fridge and begins digging through it. He leans down to look inside and hums in dry response to Melanie. Melanie rolls her eyes at Mitchell. She smiles back at Elaine. Elaine forces a smile as Melanie's hands rub up and down her arms.
Have you seen everyone yet? Tristan?
Elaine nods and remains quiet. Mitchell leans up from the fridge and scoffs to himself.
Mel, where are my drinks at?
Melanie's hands drop from holding Elaine. She looks over to him.
Check the crisper, Mitch.
She shakes her head and walks over to the kitchen island. She picks up the candles near the cake. She starts to stick them into the cake. She glances over at Elaine. Elaine chews at the skin on her bottom lip. She crosses her arms over her chest.
How's everything been, Elle?
Elaine looks up at her mom.
It's been good.
Mitchell finds his beer in the crisper. He smiles down at it and picks a bottle. He twists the lid free and takes a long, loud sip. Elaine looks over to Mitchell, then the ground. She ignores the loud sips from Mitchell. He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand.
So, how many month chips you got yet?
Elaine cringes at the words. She glares down at the wood floor beneath her Converse. She sighs.
Plenty.
Mitchell nods. He closes the fridge and walks over to the island. He stands across from Melanie and Elaine. He takes another long drink. He sets his bottle on the counter.
Did you want a beer? It might help settle your nerves.
Elaine looks up at Mitchell in shock. Her eyes glare at him and she scoffs. She stomps out of the kitchen, leaving Melanie and Mitchell behind. Melanie lets out a loud exhale. She smacks her hands on the counter.
Mitchell, what the hell?
Interior, hallway, day. Elaine quickly rushes through the kitchen and dining room out into the hallway. She smacks at the decorations that hang in her face. Tears spill over her cheeks. She shoves past people while she lets out quick apologies. Hannah comes into the hallway to catch Elaine, but Elaine shoves past her.
Elaine? Wait, what's wrong?
Elaine shakes her head and keeps walking towards the door.
Leave me alone.
She pushes the door open and steps out. Exterior, front porch, day. Elaine steps out onto the porch. She lets out a long-held breath. Her hands start to fumble with her pockets. She walks over to the steps of the porch. She pulls the pack of cigarettes from her back pocket. She drops them by accident. They hit the steps.
Damn it.
She bends down and picks them up. She checks the pack and takes out a cigarette. She puts it between her lips and retrieves the lighter. She lights it and takes one long drag. Elaine blows out the smoke and rests her shoulder on the post of the porch. She squints out at the front yard decorations that stick out of the grass. They blow back and forth in the wind. The front door opened and Elaine huffs. She stays facing forward.
What happened, Ellen?
Hannah takes a step toward her and Elaine doesn't move. Hannah crosses her arms over her chest. She stretches her neck to look at Elaine.
Did Dad say something?
Elaine scoffs.
You mean your dad?
Hannah shuts her mouth and nods. She walks over to some chairs that sit on the porch and takes a seat.
I know he can be an ass.
Elaine nods and takes another long drag. She blows out the last bit of smoke. Hannah pats at the seat next to her. Elaine looks back at Hannah. Elaine finishes what is left of her cigarette and puts the butt out on the bottom of her shoe. She holds the dead cigarette between her fingers.
If you toss it in Mom's flower bed, I wouldn't tell you. She can't keep him alive anyway.
Elaine carefully drops it into the flower bed. She takes the seat beside Hannah.
He talks more out of his ass than ever.
Hannah laughs and laughs. Elaine looks over at her with a raised brow.
Sorry, you're not wrong though, but it doesn't mean he doesn't care about you.
Elaine rolls her eyes. She leans back in her seat.
I'm just telling you, the people in there are rooting for you. Dad, Mom, Granny.
Elaine crosses her arms over her chest tightly and looks away.
Yeah, but they don't get it. They think they know recovery, that it's easy. But it's not.
Hannah nods as she listens closely.
I think you can eventually help us understand and learn along beside you. Elle, I know they can be judgy at times, but they don't matter. You do.
Elaine ignores her. Hannah stands up.
I know. Stupid, right? But we are happy for you, for showing up and doing the work to be here. We didn't know if we would lose you. The choices made were always for you and Tristan. He wants you here.
Elaine perks up. She stands up slowly beside her sister.
Come inside. Have some cake. Tristan has been waiting for you to be here all day.
Elaine nods and follows behind Hannah to the door. Interior, dining room, day. Elaine walks in slowly beside her sister. The room is full of people now. Tristan sits at the table. His cake sits in front of him. Melanie struggles to light his candles.
Does someone have a lighter?
Elaine comes forward and raises her. Tristan shyly smiles at her and invites her over. She hesitates, then comes to stand beside him. She leans over the cake and lifts the candles. People in the room begin to sing happy birthday to Tristan. He sits back in his seat, staring around the room. His eyes fall back on Elaine, who looks around as well before looking down at him. They share a quiet smile. She mouths a few words to Tristan.
Happy birthday, Teak.
Tristan's small smile stays on his lips. He blinks and then whispers back, "Thanks, Mom." The end.
That was Birthday Candles by Hannah Grace. If you're here, if you're in the room, Issa McMullen, Samantha Phalen, and Hannah Grace, come on down and have a seat. Pick a seat, any seat. Sit one center somewhere.
Okay, I'll be Hannah. I'll be here.
Let's hear it again for her off. Many of you know it takes a lot of courage to put your work out there to allow people to say the words out loud. Thank you guys for submitting and being a part of this. We will start, get your questions ready, but we'll start with Cottontail by Issa McMullen. Wave at everybody, Issa said they know who they're. There's a couple things, I want to kick it off. There's a couple things visually that really popped for me. And I worked produce in high school, so I was like, okay. The scene with the old guy on the bus is disgusting and relatable and makes a lot of sense to me because I've seen it happen. I've watched it happen to other people. So there were a few things like that. I was like, you're creating real images that's real easy for us to see. And there was a couple others I probably should have taken real notes. But no, that's one of the reasons I was selected for the festival. What do you guys have out there? What do you want to know about this show? What comments do you have about this show? Chris?
I'd just like to know where the idea came from. Like, yeah,
Why a bunny?
So, sorry, I'm getting over a head cold, so I said it does sound terrible, but I promise I'm not contagious. To make a long story short, there was this medical miracle where a woman named Mary Toft in the 1800s was reportedly giving birth to rabbits. That was the thing. Of course, that's not the reality. The reality was a really disgusting doctor was sexually assaulting her by putting dead rabbits and other animals inside of her. Oh, wow. Horrifying. And then they would go to medical theaters and basically put on a performance where she would give birth, because he was trying to get all these accolades of like, look, I discovered this woman. You should look it up. Fascinating story.
Yeah, wow.
But I kind of fell in love with her, and my heart broke for her for many reasons. And I wanted her to have agency. That was like all I kept thinking when I was, learning this story, is she was just this kind of vehicle for this man, for these people to see. And so then I've recently become fascinated with motherhood. I'm not a mother, and I don't plan to be, but it's fascinating to me. And so I wanted to write something where she did want to have her baby. And even if it wasn't her choice, in the end, that is her baby.
I love that you subverted it and never once mentioned a father. Like,
Yeah.
No, I love that, and with especially with that history. Who else has something? Oh,
So is it similar? I mean, that's horrifying, but super interesting background. Because what I thought, and we were talking about this yesterday with like the audience like projecting what they think the author means, and maybe the author maybe this is what you meant. But so what I thought was that because you have all these men at the very beginning, especially, that are like putting pressure on her and society, sort of societal issues that that you guys have to deal with, which is terrible, but that is almost causing this like prey animal pregnancy, and sort of like her feeling that pressure from society of being like an object or something that is, to be preyed upon by these gross men.
That's what you meant. We've been doing a lot of that the last year.
I'll put that.
But it kind of makes sense with the story you're talking about. I mean, that's very, like a horrifying real life example of that.
And I had to change the casting because the snowstorm. So that's why you got a female nurse and doctor who did a wonderful job. The grossness of us men. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, while we were reading through all of that, the striking visual of the cotton fur in the blood on the red tongue, I really enjoy like seeing that in my mind's eye. I think that'll make a great shot. Really cool.
John.
I honestly thought that Olivia made an error when she said fur. I thought she meant to say foam. But it took a minute to get pulled in, and that was it. Like, it made sense, as you reveal a little more.
That was going to be my question. Is did you have the name Cottontail from the beginning, the title, or had you thought much about it? Because I'm thinking I might want the reveal.
It was, so there was a lot of, actually, for me, back and forth, and I brought it up in class, because I wasn't sure. It was kind of a placeholder title. It was, well, I have to give it a title, and okay, what's the first thing I could think of? Rabbit, Cottontail. There you go. It's not lacking on the puns. I mean, her name is Harriet.
Thank you. Okay. I was like, Harriet. Yeah,
Peter Rabbit. It's not. I'm not even. But then it just, I don't know, I ended up liking it. It felt kind of snappy. I love a one-word title. That always gets me. I know personally that's always very interesting to me, because I'm like, oh, okay, so you've got more to tell me. And then when I presented it to the class, people seemed to have really positive reactions to it, and it being that reveal.
Yeah.
Because I think something that it did that I didn't expect was people were like searching the whole time, like, well, when is it coming in, and then people seemed to like that when it was finally revealed, it all connected. So.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any questions? I'll ask this of each of you at the end. Do you have any questions for the audience now that you've heard it out loud?
I think I think the only thing that took me by surprise a bit is I was not surprised, I guess, but it was interesting to me that people laughed at the ending, and I wonder if that was just nervousness or if that was actually funny. I just am curious. Like, did that actually read as funny?
I don't think when you're seeing the actual imagery of the whole thing that it would be funny.
Right.
But yeah, like I think it's just
It's I think it was just surprising. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dark.
And it's
If it anything, it would be a darker.
Yeah.
Sort of a good word.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
I don't think it would be fun.
That kind of thing is what we'll laugh at.
Yeah, it's a very, like, a nervous laugh for me. Because I was like, huh.
Well,
Right, it's like, yeah.
yeah, well, that was Cottontail by Easton Wells. Next up, we have Can't Start a Fire Without a Spark by Samantha Phalen. I love the music. Every choice of song that you picked throughout, I was like, because I feel the same way about it. You could tell it was written by a person who's done theater. You've hung out with theater, not just because of the stuff on stage, but you've done theater and hung around theater people. That's quite obvious to me. What question? I love it. What questions do you guys have out there or comments? Jacob.
The very subtle the wine bottle going overboard and then being wrapped.
Yes.
I was like, something's on its way. Built suspense really well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanna kind of piggyback off of that because having read it, we read it the first time, and I had not read it before we did the read through of it, and I was thinking the same thing. Like as I was like, what is gonna happen? Like, even like before like that, I mean that I love that the vines wrapping the bottle, but as soon as he's there, you're like, I was like, man, this is gonna turn somewhere. And it did. It like really got intense.
I mean,
It was a lot of
that's
fun.
literally what he is they are the god of. So like that was perfection.
Yeah.
It was great.
Thank you.
Subtle references.
When did this come to you? I'm sure theater was, a big inspiration, of course. But what made you decide? Kind of the same question. What was the origin of it?
This is kind of in school I recently added a creative writing minor, so it's like I have to think about like original stuff more often, if that makes sense. But back in February of last year, I had the idea I really wanted to do a Dionysus-centered story. And it started out as a whole bunch of different things. So I was like, what if Dionysus was in theater? And so it started out as like a play, but it was all satyrs performing it. And it was like, I just tried to get on the page and it just didn't happen. And then literally one day I was just like, cast party. Like got online, got alcohol, cast party, stuff gets crazy. So it was.
That it does.
Exactly. It's how you end up asleep in your friend's floor while stuff is happening around you. Mom, Dad, don't listen to this. But no, it was literally the assignment for the final assignment for my screenwriting class was literally just write something that you really want to write, something that's in your head. It literally doesn't matter. So I sat down and I was like, this is my Dionysus story. And so it was like, it ended up being a lot more intimate, but I just literally sat at the keyboard, blacked out. I woke up and oh my God. What happened? So it was just kind of a jumble over the course of a year.
Nice.
Anything else? Do you have any notes for any of the actors that you've received notes from in the past?
No, I was insanely happy with how it was read. It was literally exactly how I pictured it, Mike. Oh my God. I was literally sitting in my car and I was like, I really hope Mike's reading tonight. But no, I am insanely happy with it. Thank you all so much for doing it justice.
Thank you for writing it.
One last thing. Does Dionysus continue to appear in other places post this story? Like, in your head, does he keep going?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite. That's why I love like Rick Riordan's work is. Rick Riordan's work, Neil Gaiman's American Gods. It's this idea of like even now in modern times, gods just kind of appear. I mean, their elements are still within the world. They're still existing. They're still appearing. And I think it's really interesting, especially now that we're in a society where, Greek mythos doesn't really have much bearing on American culture. It's interesting to imagine them just appearing out of nowhere. It's like, surprise! I was real the whole time.
I look forward to your career on the Supernatural reboot.
I can tell you, I went to interrupt this read or get them back where they needed to be, and the cast was really enjoying this read. Thank you for that. That was Can't Start a Fire Without a Spark by Samantha Phalen. with a completely different style of writing altogether. We have Birthday Candles with Hannah Grace. It's a genre that the redemption from the recovery genre is starting to pop up, and I'm glad that it's starting to pop up, and especially in this area. One of the things that you did for me real early is you gave me a character that I could care about, and I don't know if it was just as much as what she was doing, but she had a sister who cared about her, which gave us a reason, because a lot of times you see that character walks into the room and everybody hates them immediately. And I like that you reversed that trope, and it was she's walking into a place where she's scared still, but now everybody is on her side. And I like that you did that very much. What else do you guys have? I could talk a while about that one. I love character pieces. Mike.
Your opening line does a really nice job of setting up exactly what the struggle is, like at the heart of it. I think it's really well chosen.
Thank you.
Like, really nice job there.
What else you guys have? John.
As somebody familiar with recovery, that internal dialogue of you got to do this, you really captured that very well. Are you familiar with recovery programs yourself, or anybody?
So this is very interesting. Writing this was interesting, kind of hard, because I was in that world of I've just started learning how to write screenwriting. I just started that class, so taking this initiative to, okay, let me take something from my experience, what I've learned through my other classes, write from your experience, and also I found a connection through a song called Orange Juice by Noah Kahan, and I just kind of sat there and I've worked with and I've have close situations with recovery and people with recovery and just substance use disorder in general. So I felt like a foundation in my experience and seeing how it creates an atmosphere and wanting to always uplift stories like that. So that's kind of where I just listened to that song and then just kind of got my brain started rolling on memories and stuff like that.
That's good. What else do you guys have? Yeah, dude.
I thought the clarity of I knew everybody up there, personally in some way. The stepdad is every one of my dad's brothers. It's very clear, and you know who you're writing for, and you know who you're writing about. Those are very realized people, and I think that's very admirable for as young of a writer as you are. That's very good.
One question I have that I don't know that got answered, and I'm just curious, is who invited Elaine to the party, or did she just show up?
I feel like for Elaine, she just showed up. She knows it, and I feel like she has to show up. Because for me, what I've always thought and how I've seen people back and forth in my life and everything is that for them, recovery is every day. It's an everyday thing. You're always pushing yourself to be better, and you're always pushing yourself to keep following them goals. So for them, it's just showing up for themselves and showing up for people around them that have supported them. So I feel like Elaine wanted to be there and is just trying to force that scared part of herself down and try to take a step forward.
Oh, that's great.
Thanks.
Anybody else? John.
So I thought, to echo what other people have said, I thought it was a really carefully drawn depiction of a chaotic family gathering. I thought all of that was really effective. I'm wondering, and I don't know if I'm right about this, first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, in case I missed something, the reveal that she is the birthday boy's mother, that comes at the very end, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm wondering is, would you get something else out of it if instead of saving that for a reveal at the end, if you primed the audience at the beginning with what the stakes really are for her, somehow? I know that robs you of the reveal at the end, but I'm wondering if I might care more if I was less disoriented about what's going on for her. If it was all, I don't know, does that make sense?
Nora's got a counter.
I gotta say, I knew from the very beginning that she was his mother. She was his mother, yeah. And I don't know if that's just at the door.
Yeah,
everybody who was a mom here know that.
Yeah.
It was clear to you. Okay.
It was clear to me too.
Okay. Yeah.
It's clear to the women and Stephen.
I thought the stakes were set up because of the first line, because
because of the Happy Birthday, Tristan. She's practicing it. And I think as soon as we learn that he's a young man, it's like, oh, that's it. It's his mother.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who else she'd be practicing for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that was kind of set out, especially because the directions said the ages, so you could tell.
Yeah.
Oh, well, see, maybe we had that instead, because we read it instead of the audience.
Yeah.
Hearing it.
Yeah, I think when when you first started, that was my first impression as a mom. In my mind, it's a little kid. It's a little boy. And so it wasn't until later at 17, and that was impactful because it was like, that's a long time that she has been trying to come back into his life. It wasn't, I was picturing 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So that hit.
Agreed.
Yeah, that is way different. Do you have any questions for the audience before we wrap up?
Oh gosh.
I do have a little question about the age, because I actually almost like choked over his age when it was time for me to read it, because the image of the spaceship confetti on the table is kind of like, it was so stuck in my head, and then when I got to 17, I was like, wait a minute, I was just wondering about that.
So a part of this for me was like, I want to set up this atmosphere. It's like, oh, you're expecting a little boy, like it's for a little boy, but really, like as time goes on, I kind of just wanted this like theme to like, okay, so where is this kid? Like, how old is this kid? Like, how important is this kid to her? And like, how important is her son? And for us to meet him, and he's like almost like about to be 18 or almost about to be 17, it kind of like lets you realize that this motherhood is like also a travel and like having to rebuild that and also rethink and reevaluate with recovery, just kind of like that. I wanted to create like this time lapse, like where it's stuck, like you don't know exactly, you're trying to get there together with her.
It's good. Yes, good.
I was gonna say, I think the fact that he is 17, I really liked, because I think it's very rare. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but I thought that it was odd for a boy who's 17 years old to still have his birthday party with his family instead of with his buddies or doing something else. So the idea, the picture of him doing that and hoping that being ready for his mom to be there created a dynamic for me that was much more beautiful, I think, because they were both so badly wanting each other to be there, and yeah.
That's great. That is Birthday Candles by Hit It. We are going to take a full 10-15 minute intermission right now, so if you want to go get some cash concessions, cowbells are $2 per $1. We have coffee over there. If you're cold, it's Old Village Roasted Coffee. And we'll be, not today, it's not Old Village Roasted Coffee.
I haven't been open for like a week and a half.
Because of the holidays. Everything but Old Village Roaster. We'll see you back in like 10 minutes. Next up, we have went a little different direction. Last year, Hannah Tones was in Ian's class and submitted to our festival. And I sent out an email to all the people from last year, and she submitted again this year. Is she here? Have you seen her? Hannah Tones, are you in the building? No. So she's not here. I told her, she had emailed me, and I was like, hey, we'll record the thing just so you can see it. Always an interesting voice, and I'm glad to do it. But the cast of Made with Lavender come on down, and that includes Olivia. This is another short film, and this is called Made with Lavender by Hannah Tones.
Interior kitchen day. Sunlight shines through the window and across the pale pink walls. The counters are bare, aside from a plate of cookies wrapped tightly in cellophane. The clock ticks loudly in the quiet room. Everything is neat and orderly. Dawn, a nicely dressed woman in her early 30s, sits at a small table with her hands folded in front of her. She taps her foot on the tile floor, looking around uncomfortably. Joan, late 30s, approaches the table carrying a silver tray with 2 cups of tea on it. She sets it down, placing 1 cup carefully in front of Dawn, then takes a seat, keeping the other cup for herself.
What's the matter with you? You've barely said a word since you got here.
To be honest, I'm not sure why you invited me over.
To have tea. Isn't that what neighbors do?
Well, quite frankly, I thought you hated me.
What gave you that idea?
Jen takes a long sip of her tea.
I mean, you're always complaining about Petunia barking, and you said my yard is ruining the neighborhood because I don't cut my grass often enough. And last weekend at the bake sale for the school, I'm pretty sure I heard you mutter under your breath that you wanted me to drop dead.
Oh, yes, I remember now. I did say that.
Dawn squirms in her chair as an awkward silence settles over the table. Joan takes another sip from her cup.
Don't you want your tea? I made it with lavender. I thought you said you liked that.
I'm just not that thirsty right now.
Well, what about a cookie? They were so popular at the sale, I decided to make another batch.
I can't. My allergy, remember?
Oh, yes, that's right. What a shame.
There's a pause, then Joan gives a defeated sigh.
The tea was actually supposed to be a peace offering. I know you've only been here for a few weeks, and I have a reputation for being tough on new people. This neighborhood means a lot to me. I grew up here. I just want it to be perfect.
Dawn hesitates, but leans closer to the table with curiosity.
What have I been doing wrong, other than what you've already told me?
Joan shrugs, taking a moment to think, though the action does not appear genuine.
Oh, I suppose it's not a big deal. Your garage door makes a loud squeaky sound every time it opens and closes. You should have someone take a look at that. Your garbage can is also too close to the street. Someone could hit it. And sometimes you drive too fast. Children play here, you know, including mine and your own daughter.
Dawn averts her eyes, visibly ashamed and upset. Joan stares at the untouched cup of tea. Steam rises from the murky liquid.
You should take a drink before it cools off.
I guess I never realized I was doing all those things. I feel terrible.
Joan clenches her jaw, annoyed at being ignored, but straightens her posture and regains her composure before speaking.
People can learn, honey. And you seem like a smart woman. I'm sure you'll do better now that you know.
Joan smiles, raising her cup to her mouth, and just before she takes a drink, the smile fades.
I didn't mean to cause any trouble. After my husband died, I just thought it would be good for Camille to have a fresh start somewhere different.
Oh, I understand. A mother only wants the best for her child, and you picked a great place to raise your daughter, even if you don't appreciate it as much as you should.
Dawn shrinks back into her seat with guilt.
This neighborhood is something to be proud of, something that should be respected. When my children are grown, they're going to have fond memories of living here. I'm going to make sure of it.
I want to do my best to be a part of this community.
Well, you can start by giving that house a fresh coat of paint. Miss Reed, the woman who lived there before you, bless her heart, she always kept the place looking its best, even in her 80s. She would be outside just about every day sprucing up something.
Wow, she must have been a great neighbor to have.
That's the kind of dedication we expect from people with the privilege of living here, Dawn. If she could do that at her age, you should be more than capable of keeping up with the property.
Joan once again looks at the cup that Dawn has yet to drink, and clicking her manicured nails on the table impatiently.
You're right. There's no excuse.
You must taste it at least, Dawn.
What?
The tea. I think you're going to love it. Just give it a try.
I just don't think I'm really in the mood for tea. It's not that cold outside.
No, for heaven's sake, I know we might have gotten off on the wrong foot, but why can't you accept that I'm trying to make things right?
Dawn stares at her, surprised by the sudden outburst.
I made it just for you. I thought you would be grateful. Can't you just be polite and take a drink?
Dawn gently takes the cup and raises it to her mouth. She glances at Joan, who's watching her intently, and takes a long, thoughtful drink. Then she places the cup on the table.
Well, how does it taste?
Good. It's very good.
I knew you'd love it. I'm sorry if that came across harshly. My husband is always telling me I'm a bit of a control freak. I have a bad temper when I don't get my way.
It's okay. I'm sorry if I was being rude.
Oh no, I'm the rude one. I haven't been very nice to you. I guess I have a hard time adjusting to change.
It's been an adjustment for me too, but I really do like it here.
I'm sorry for what I said at the bake sale last weekend. Honestly, my feelings were a little hurt when you didn't buy any of my cookies.
I told you I'm allergic to almonds.
I know. All the time I thought you were making it up as an excuse. I had no idea it was so severe.
Oh, yes. The last time I accidentally ate one, it nearly killed me. Thankfully, my sister got me to the hospital just in time.
Oh, that sounds dreadful. I just hate that you didn't get to try any of the cookies. They're so delicious.
Actually, Joe, could I have a cold bottle of water?
Sure, honey.
She stands up, moving over to the fridge.
I think the tea might have been too hot. My throat is hurting.
Joan opens the fridge, smiling.
I don't feel good at all.
People can learn. What a joke.
Over the shoulder, she grabs a bottle of water from the top shelf. Next to it sits a carton labeled almond milk. A loud thump can be heard from the table as she closes the fridge door. She turns and walks over to where Dawn was sitting. The chair is now tipped on its side and she is laying on the floor, gasping for air. Joan watches her for a moment and sets the water bottle on the table.
I guess you won't be needing this after all.
Dawn gazes up at her with wide eyes, her hands twitching and the rest of her body convulsing. She coughs, spitting up blood onto the floor. Joan scowls, her face twisting with anger.
You idiot! Do you have any idea how long I had to scrub to get those tiles spotless?
Dawn continues struggling, her breath's heavy and raspy as the blood pours from her mouth.
Look at you, you're pathetic. Don't you know how to act when you're a guest in someone's house?
She goes over to Dawn and uses the tip of her shoe to push her shoulder, rolling her onto her back.
I knew you didn't belong here. You're not good enough for this community.
Dawn coughs again, blood spurting into the air.
You could at least try to hold it back. You have no self-control. Just swallow it or something.
From Dawn's point of view, Joan towers above, glaring down at her. You hear a gurgling sound from Dawn as the blood strangles her. Joan sighs in disgust at Dawn, then moves briskly to the other side of the room, where there's a phone on the wall.
I don't have time to deal with your mess right now.
Joan takes a deep breath. She looks at the phone for a few seconds. She scrunches up her nose, contorting her face.
Oh, God,
She squints her eyes, attempting to squeeze tears from them.
You have to hurry. I don't know what happened.
She exhales a shaky breath, raising her hands to her mouth and grimacing.
Some kind of reaction. Oh, we were just having tea.
She drops her shoulders, her face returning to normal, her expression is blank. Behind her, Dawn has stopped moving.
Okay, let's get this over with.
She picks up the phone, dialing 911.
That was Made with Lavender by Hannah Tone. Next up, we have Still Be Dead in the Morning by Ian Nolte. Come on down, Cat. Woo! I'll put Stacy right here. Miller.
I try to make it quiet.
Still Be Dead in the Morning by Ian Nolte. Interior hallway night. Stacy, in her 60s, wearing sweats and an oversized cardigan, pushes a cleaning cart down the hall of a police precinct. Miller, a middle-aged detective in a rumpled suit, briskly squeezes by, bumping her cart. He barely grunts an apology. Stacy winces, but keeps walking. Interior office continuous. Stacy follows Miller with her cart into a cluttered office. Miller rearranging photographs on the table, and Adams, a younger detective wearing a tracksuit, don't even look up.
I don't know. The mini mart cashier stonewalling. Says he didn't see the shooter, heard the shots and hid.
Frustrated, he taps his fingers on a video cassette.
And I've seen clearer Bigfoot footage than what's on the surveillance tape.
Adams rubs his eyes as he returns a wallet to a clear evidence bag.
Even the kids' pockets are empty. Not even so much as a library card.
Stacy moves around the table, dumping the contents of the wastepaper basket into the trash can on her cart. Miller pushes his chair back.
We just need a name. Somebody to take a run at. But as long as no one is talking, we got nothing.
Stacy glances down at the photographs on the table. Insert. A spray of photographs, various angles of a body in a bloody white hoodie laying on its back on the floor of a convenience store. One shows a close-up of the face of a dead teenager, just a boy, his eyes wide and vacant. Adams stands to join Miller.
Well, it's like you always say, we'll still be dead in the morning.
Miller nods as he begins scooping the evidence from the desk into a box.
Yeah. Box it up for tonight. We take a fresh look tomorrow.
Adams opens the door.
Something will shake loose.
They exit, hauling away the evidence box. Stacy stares after them a moment as she wipes down the table. Interior evidence room, night. Stacy works to sweep the small area in front of the desk where Bill, a uniformed officer, sits at a computer. Behind him is a cage door blocking access to shelves of evidence boxes.
I need to get the trash in the cage.
Bill sighs as he gets up to unlock the door.
Don't take all night, okay?
Stacy nods as she wheels her cart into the evidence locker. Interior evidence locker continuous. Inside, Stacy's eyes scan the row of shelves. She spots the box Miller and Adams were working with and moves to it. Quickly, with practiced precision, she opens it and retrieves what she wants, the video cassette. She slides the box back in place. She takes a spray bottle from her cart and purposefully places it next to the box as she leaves. Interior evidence room continuous. Stacy wheels her cart out of the cage.
Thanks.
Bill nods at her without looking up from his computer. Interior squad room night. Stacy pushes her cart into the dark, empty squad room and locks the door behind her. She walks up a row of desks toward the front podium to find a television on a cart with a VCR. She drags a chair in front of the television and slides the video cassette into the VCR. She squints as blurry black and white security footage plays. On screen, from a high angle in the corner of a convenience store, the unclear image shows a boy in a white hoodie picking through sodas. A man in dark, bulky clothes, his back to the camera and his face completely obscured, steps into frame. The boy turns to look. They appear to exchange words quickly in the silent video cassette. The man fires 2 shots into the boy's chest. Stacy watches the screen as the boy falls. The man steps quickly out of frame and disappears from the video. Stacy pauses the tape, staring at the body of the boy. He is almost abstract in the scan lines of the paused video. She closes her eyes and takes a deep breath in through her nose. She releases it slowly through her mouth.
I can feel you. You haven't crossed. Not yet.
Stacy opens her eyes again. They change from sad to focused. Her breathing intensifies. She is transfixed on the screen. She stops, holding stock still, her eyes wide. Blood starts to trickle from one tear duct. The television begins to glow, an unnatural brightness. It fills the dark room with a pale light. Stacy wipes at the blood on her face. It smears. She stands. The light is forming flickering, glowing images. Pale, translucent white outlines of the convenience store projected into the squad room. Racks of chips, aisles of coolers. A ghostly recreation of the scene from the video. Stacy moves to the center of the room. The figure of the boy lies bleeding on the floor. A specter in washed-out white light. Stacy kneels beside him. She places one hand over his form.
Come on, baby. Show me what you saw.
Stacy winces in pain. The light in the room starts glitching and jumping like a VHS tape rewinding. Stacy watches as, in reverse, the gunman from the tape strides backward into the room. He turns and points his gun. The boy's corpse on the floor lifts to standing again, facing the man. In a flash, the blood soaking his chest flows back in his body. 2 puffs of hot gas suck back into the barrel of the gun. They both stop, frozen in this moment. Stacy steps toward the gunman. She examines his face. It's dark, blurry, and indistinct, like a bad frame from a low-resolution tape.
This wasn't a stranger to you. You know him. Know his name, don't you?
Stacy turns toward the boy. His eyes are wide, terrified.
Come closer. He can't hurt you now.
The boy reluctantly steps to stand with Stacy, struggling as if awaking from a dream. He flickers beside her.
I just need his name, baby. Then we can be done. I promise.
The boy leans towards Stacy, whispers in her ear. She listens with her eyes closed. Stacy reaches up to touch his face, but her hand moves through him like a shadow. She sighs.
Thank you. You can go now.
The boy steps away. The light dims. He and the ghostly convenience store fade. The squad room is dark again. Stacy bows her head. Blood drips from her eyes onto her sweater. She dabs at it. Stacy picks up a post-it from the desk. She scrawls a note in purposefully childish handwriting. Remember, Terry Taylor. Meet up, Mini-Mart, AM, tomorrow.
Thank you, baby. They just need the name. Once they have that, it will all be done. In time.
She folds up the post-it neatly and puts it in her pocket. She grabs the VHS from the VCR and returns to her cart. Interior evidence room, night. Stacy wheels her cart up to Bill at the desk.
Left my Windex in there like a dummy.
Bill rolls his eyes and gets up to open the cage. Interior evidence locker, night. Quickly, precisely, Stacy slides the box of evidence off the shelf. She puts the video cassette back in carefully. She removes the clear evidence bag holding the boy's wallet. She puts her folded post-it into the wallet.
They'll find our note. They'll think it's yours. They'll see the name. They'll find him eventually. They always do. And then you can rest.
She slides the box back on the shelf. She picks up the spray bottle she left there earlier. Interior evidence room, continuous. Stacy steps out of the cage. She holds up her bottle and waggles it to show Bill.
Back to work.
Bill taps his keyboard.
Have a good one.
Stacy pushes her cart into the empty hall. Interior hallway, night. Close up. Stacy's hand wheels the cart. Small drops of blood are drying on the sleeve of her sweater. The cart rattles and bumps in the empty precinct as Stacy rounds the corner. The hallway remains empty and quiet as the sound of Stacy's cart wheels squeak into the distance.
That was Still Be Dead in the Morning by Ian Nolte. So welcome to the stage, Ian Nolte. And Hannah and Jen, if you'll come back down to be the liaison for grab a seat anywhere. You guys have spent a couple days with her piece. It was Made with Lavender by Hannah Tone. What was your initial reactions when reading this piece?
It was one that because I mean it's the reveal at the end of who this person Joan actually is and what she's up to, and so like from the reader side of it, I read it completely different the first time through. I was like, oh no, this is not who this person is. Like she's somebody completely different. And
yeah, we did actually read it a little bit differently the second time.
So you didn't see it. You didn't see it coming.
Did not.
How many people thought something Maleficent was? Everybody. So everybody except for the reader. What struck you about this piece, Nick?
Like I could tell that there was something sinister going on, but I thought it was going to be something much more like
playful. Like this character is going to do something that's like she's gonna like poison her or something, and then she has to go to the hospital, and she's like, oh no, or something. And then the reveal of that being it goes against what you're thinking, because it seems just such a normal environment.
What was interesting to me about the piece was that there was no point had Joan's character planned to let her off the hook.
Right.
Yeah.
Like from the very first time that she walked in until it was done, it was like, drink your tea. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to let her apologize. Because what's the line towards the end? People learn.
People can learn. What a joke.
Yeah, what a joke. What else do you guys say?
It was reminiscent of the old Twilight Zone show that starts out with just, casual kind of something going on and then builds to something like this. So it was very well written.
I got some Stepford Wives kind of vibes to that.
Stepford Wives, but also John Waters' Serial Mom.
Yeah. Well, and it felt kind of like a period piece because she goes and gets her phone off the wall. Like as soon as she went to that, I was like, it wasn't a cell phone. Like she went and got the phone off the wall. Who else? Yeah.
This is maybe more of a question for the author who is not here, but I was curious about from the beginning I kind of figured it was going to be a poisoning thing because of the emphasis on the ingredients and the title being made with lavender, and she talks so much about it's made with lavender, and then there's the line about how she's allergic but didn't say to what until later on. So that's what struck me was the almonds versus lavender and what is the allergy. Yeah.
I thought she did it. Every time we thought something was going to hit, I thought she delayed that suspense just a little bit more, and I thought that was pretty nice. I thought she did a nice job with that. Yeah.
The only recommendation I would have is the reason I knew there was something. It's just like all shows and movies do. I think there was something in the stage notes. It's like they showed they give you a close up of the drink at some point, and I'm like, I'd just cut that so that like it really can't. I think it could be a little bit more of a reveal. Also, depending on how it was played, how the actors played it.
I saw another hand somewhere.
Even though I did suspect at the beginning, I was like, oh, this lady's getting poisoned. I do think she did a good job, delaying that. It was a little bit up and down. Like when they mentioned that she had a daughter, I was like, oh, surely she's not.
Oh yeah.
Well, not only
this child an orphan.
Yeah, not only is she a daughter, she's a single mother.
Yeah. When she said that, I was like, oh no, this is gonna be
It's gonna be something like tamer, like she's gonna sabotage something for her.
And I do also think it did have a feel of being set in an older time also, because all these expectations that are on these women, keep your yard up, paint your house, I was like, clearly neither of them has a job, I guess. It didn't feel like you could kind of picture them as her in an apron maybe.
So Hannah, when you see this up in 6 months to a year, reply to all this in the comments. We'll try to read back on the comments. Anybody have any final thoughts? Yeah.
I also thought that she was going to be poisoned, but I thought she didn't believe the almond allergy. It was going to test her.
Yeah.
And I was really shocked that she didn't call 911. I thought she was going to be like, oh, okay, well, you are, I guess.
Yes, that was a
yeah.
surprise.
This is so much more sinister than I really
my favorite thing is how dare you get blood on
She actually drank I thought the sleaze was going to be that she kind of mimicked the fact that she was like, all right.
Yeah, because you obviously don't trust.
Right.
Yeah, Mike Murdock.
Did I miss something? Are they supposed to be British? Who drinks milk in their tea?
I knew that.
Well, there you go. Easily poisoned Nick Booth. But I just believe if they were meant to be British to begin with, but it also speaks to sort of that British air of how they want everything perfect, and this neighborhood needs to be a certain way. And I just wondered if that was even a thing.
Hannah, answer that in the comments. When we post that up. No, it was great. That was Made with Lavender by Hannah Tillman. I gave a brief bio on Ian earlier, but he teaches playwriting, or not playwriting, screenwriting. He teaches screenwriting at Marshall. This is the I mean, you've been writing with us forever. It feels like. I mean, not just. I mean, did you used to send stuff back to arts back in the old days?
Oh, I used to do your film sprint.
Yeah,
it was really fun.
Well, there's some good news coming up about that that we'll relay in the near future. Tell us. I mean, again, I think we're covered up with procedurals, so throwing that on its end and bringing in an interesting, different character, I thought was fun. What was the genesis of this script?
Oh, this story. I actually wrote it for a screenplay sprint, and I like to do those because for me it like blends creative writing and like high stakes gambling in a way that like I find like but the way those work is you have like I think I had that was like a 48-hour sprint, so I had like 2 days to write a story, and you like receive your prompt like it's it must match these certain guidelines, and for those guidelines it was you have to write a ghost story, and I was like ugh. And it has to take place at a police station. I was like, double gross. It was like, it has to include a VHS tape. And I was like, well, at least there's something for me to latch on to. So I was trying to think of a ghost story that could take place in a police station, but I didn't want to write about a cop. So I was trying to think about who at a police station would I like to write about the most. And I don't know, I was a janitor for a while in my life, and I think it's like an interesting job. To creep around a place at night with a mop, so I was thinking about a character like that. And you described the story as procedural, which I think is interesting because it is like a procedural mystery, but I think also that I was not interested in the mystery, so I think it fails in that regard a lot. And then I just had the central image of like how a ghost could emerge from a VHS tape that I wanted to play with. So that's where the story comes from.
What do you guys have out there? Love this guy thing, yeah.
Just love the visual of the store being like recreated within the room that she's playing the VHS, and really enjoyed that part of it.
Oh, thank you. I liked that picture. It seems like an interesting picture because like a squad room is kind of a room like this, and I was just imagining like like a wide shot of a room like this, but with the other like this white light creating an image within it. I thought that was a pretty picture that I was trying to describe, but I think I had a hard time getting into language what like popped in my mind when I was imagining it. So I would like to want to look at those pages.
Yeah, I got the visuals.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think a police station, like a hospital, is manned 24 hours a day. So this is not like a janitor that's around when there's nobody there. This janitor had to be invisible. And I thought it was really great that even Bill, just do whatever. They don't even recognize.
Acknowledge them.
Yeah. This is a larger. I think that a lot about janitors, and I think you should not treat your janitor like they're invisible. They do kind of operate in the edges of a building, and I think that's weird sometimes.
Yeah.
I was wondering why she called the boy baby, like I think 3 times. At first I thought maybe she's related to this boy that died, and then I decided no, clearly this is something she has done before multiple times. So she was just like, I was just kind of wondering about that.
I don't know how many times I use that word, which might be just a mistake, but I wondered to her, like my idea for her is that she is this empathy for like
a grandmotherly.
The idea that she can like call you from death, but when she does, she feels so bad for you.
Okay.
Like she feels this sadness that you're dead, and she's trying to help you.
Okay.
And I wanted her language to be like if you were sick and someone were trying to baby you along.
Okay.
Like if you had a real bad fever, someone might be super kind to you. And that's how she views these apparitions.
Okay.
Oh.
I like, so you mentioned that it's clear she's done this before, right? Because she has the comment about they always do, or what. So that's intended, right? That she's been doing this for a while.
Yeah, I like the idea that like this, she just does this.
Yeah. So I wonder, what I wonder about that is, what if the officers, I don't like the word bumbling because that implies like funny, and I don't know that that's really what I want, but like that they're more inept. Like at the beginning, like because I think it's clear they're like, well, it always falls into place, which sort of foreshadows maybe what's going on. But if they're even more like, I almost want to not like them, be like, why don't they care about that? Like, like they're clearly not doing their job, which it sounds like they are kind of doing their job. And then she comes in and does this, like, her whole thing and shows why they get anything done.
Yeah.
It's just like a thought I had while listening to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like the idea that they are failing more demonstrably on page 2.
Right.
Mike.
So the dialogue standing in front of the evidence box, when she goes back to get the Windex. You have like a kind of it's a pretty big chunk of line there. They'll find the name, they'll do this, they'll do this, they'll do this. I don't think you need that.
Yeah, I was curious. I wanted to hear it out loud for that reason. I think still in this draft that I have now, I believed perhaps I could not express the story.
No, I get you. I think
with the pictures, you know what I mean?
I think you can use baby.
Yeah.
You won't be long now, baby. Something like use the baby moniker to know who she's talking to, and
Yeah, I think overly concerned in this current draft that the procedure of what
yes,
you would get to the end and say, I don't know what she did or why. So I did just have her say it out loud at the end as a cheat.
So, from you guys who received your grade about a month ago and have listened to Ian's critiques for the last 3 months or so, is there anything you want to say?
Tearing to you. No, I really enjoyed it. My mom and I were kind of talking about how interesting it is that you chose to make her an older woman. We rarely see older women in protagonist roles, and on top of that, like adding, she has to be invisible, right? She's this kind of quiet character as janitors tend to be, and on top of that, she's an already ignored class, which is a middle-aged woman. I think that was interesting. I don't know if that was intentional at all.
Oh yeah, that is interesting, the idea of her as like ignored or invisible. I wanted her to like squeak around like a ghost, kind of. Yeah. I think that makes sense what you said.
That was Still Be Dead in the Morning by Ian. Next up, we're not going to take a full break. We're going to be ready in like 2 or 3 minutes. We're going to present The Dragon Ruby by T. Mike Murdock. I will introduce the writer and the guy who's going to be reading stage directions for this show. Your friend and mine, Mike Murdock.
Hi, everybody. A brief history about this before we begin. So I'm in a master's program right now at the David Lynch School of Cinematic Arts. And I've just finished my first semester, and the final for that semester was I had to write a TV pilot. I had TV writing this semester, and I had written a novel with my friend Herschel Jeffrey called The Dragon Ruby a long time ago. You can't find it, don't worry about it.
I've tried.
Several have tried, several failed. Somehow John found it. Anyway, so I wanted to see what it would be like to write a TV pilot based on that book. It's a medieval fantasy comedy kind of thing. I originally wrote an hour-long version of it, and then for the final, I rewrote it into a 30-minute version, which is what you'll be seeing here. And that's really the whole thing. That's really the setup. Hopefully the rest speaks for itself. I'm happy to hear feedback, and this is why I really think New Works Festivals are so important. So thank you all for being here and listening to it for the first time. So here we go. The Dragon Ruby, written by T. Michael Murdock, based on the novel The Dragon Ruby by T. Michael Murdock and J. Herschel Jeffrey. Draft 50,000. Interior, the bristly pig, evening. A fireplace, logs and kindling crackle as they burn, ghostly light. In front of the fire, 5 shadowy figures sit, all silhouetted by the firelight. They seem to be listening intently. A dapper, small, humanoid person sits in a chair opposite them. His leg sits straight out from him as his knees don't reach the end of the chair seat. The light dances off of a pocket watch he is holding in his hand. He glances at it and then back at the figures before him. He speaks very succinctly and eloquently.
My name is Gerard Lafleur. Time is of the essence. I have allotted myself 30 minutes in order to explain to you the danger you face and to give respect to those that came before you. It is my great hope that you avoid a similar fate and that we will celebrate your victory together. But it isn't likely.
Gerard clicks a button on his pocket watch and we follow the fire deep into his eyes until it is gone altogether.
And so the tale of the Dragon Ruby begins.
Exterior, Plainswatch Keep, night, complete darkness, then the striking of flint and steel, a face in the sparking light. Ganix, late 40s, weathered but handsome. He lights a torch. The torchlight reveals more of both Ganix and the area. Ganix wears dark boiled leather armor. He is clearly a rogue. As he surveys the area with the newly lit torch, he spies a grated manhole cover. The flame light glints off of something running across the grate. It is crisscrossing tripwires.
Ganix had always considered himself a superb thief.
Ganix stops for a moment, as if hearing the voiceover. He raises an eyebrow, clicks his tongue, and smirks. Really? Exterior, Plainswatch Keep, night, continuous. Ganix follows the wires to what they would trip, and he finds a giant swinging wooden stake made to both smash and pierce anything it would fly into.
Nothing irritated this master of the art more than poorly designed traps. Ganix's skills far outmatched nearly anyone in the Seven Kingdoms, and thus, Ganix was often irritated.
Some people deserve to have their shit stolen.
Exterior, Plainswatch Keep, night, continuous. Gerard's voiceover continues through Ganix's actions. Ganix cuts the rope on the stake's side, rendering both the stake and the tripwires useless.
Ganix had not known fear for most of his adult life. Few could match his skill at combat, let alone his penchant for stealing valuables from very powerful people.
He cracks his knuckles, slides the torch into a well-placed torch holder in the wall next to the grate, puts his dagger between his teeth, and lifts the grated manhole cover and moves it to the side.
But where he was headed now was not the abode of any ordinary powerful person, and the object of his desire wasn't just a simple object of value. It was the most powerful gem known to man.
As the now flaccid tripwires are sprung, the rope from the stake gently floats toward him. Without looking, Ganix catches the rope and gives it a pull, yanking the rest of the rope to him. He expertly coils it up and pulls a bag from his belt. The bag is clearly too small to hold all of the rope, to the untrained and unmagicked eye. Ganix opens the bag and stuffs the rope into it. The magical bag seems to devour the rope. The bag isn't that big, but when he puts the rope in, it just disappears.
This bag, for instance, was a bag of infinite area, once owned by an extremely irascible lawman of the Western Reaches. This was a point of pride for Ganix and spoke yet again to his prowess.
Ganix pats the bag, puts it back onto his belt, grabs the torch, and gives a cursory look down into the hole. As fog rolls out of the grate's hole, Ganix notices a ladder going down one side. Ganix breaks the fourth wall to respond to Gerard.
I'm just covered up in prowess, if we're being honest. And I would like to say that, at this point, I thought it was nuts that the most powerful gem in the world, an artifact so potent that it can make you immortal and imbue you with all the magics of the world, making you the most dominant and influential being this side of the gods, wasn't buried thousands of miles under a glacier or swimming around under hundreds of feet of boiling lava at the base of a volcano. Nah, it's just in a storeroom, in an abandoned keep, in the middle of the Pell Plains, a place that was literally on every map from the last 1,000 years. Fucking bonkers.
Ganix shrugs and then goes back into his own story. Exterior, Plainswatch Keep, night, continuous. There is a sudden rush of wind out of the hole and a monstrous noise from somewhere deep within.
Okay, so maybe it's not that abandoned. Capital. Maybe this won't bore me after all.
Exterior, Plainswatch Keep, night, continuous. With renewed energy, Ganix tosses the torch into the hole and slides down the ladder into the darkness and fog. As he does, the monstrous scream echoes louder still. Exterior, outside of a cave, day. Open close on the faces of two guys running away from something, screaming. As we pull back, we see something moving inside the cave, chasing them.
Why did you kick it?
You didn't know what it was!
All the more reason not to kick it, Neil.
Just run, Bob!
The cave shakes and a giant spider chitters out of it and stands on top of the ledge just over the entrance. It wraps a spiny leg around a tree, rips it from the ground, and hurls it toward the running duo. It crashes a few feet behind them.
It's throwing trees now! The giant spider is throwing trees!
Keep running!
Just a few more seconds!
The giant spider looks to be about to leap after them when suddenly there's a terrible high-pitched screech and an explosion at the cave's mouth. The ledge gives way under the spider and it topples into the rubble. Another high-pitched screech and another explosion. The spider explodes in a glorious display of grossness, legs flying in all directions, and then is buried in rubble and debris. Exterior, under a shady tree, day, continuous. Bob and Neil collapse on the ground under a shady tree, looking at the carnage behind them. This is the first time we really see them in full. They are atypical fantasy adventurers, wearing light armor, swords and scabbards on their backs. They are dirty and covered in cobwebs.
What the hell was all that about?
Neil is about to speak, but is interrupted by Gerard's voiceover.
Yes. What in the hell is all this about? Exactly what do you think you're doing? I'm in the middle of...
It's just sounded like a good time to give you a break and tell you some of our story, like how we got here.
Neil has a point. You've been telling your story for a while now, but I think we need to show how we all got together, right?
Show who? Exactly.
You! These other guys. Everyone. What do you think?
Why would anyone even remotely care about that?
I have a feeling we're going to be pretty important characters.
Definitely.
I don't have time for this.
Bob and Neil snap back into character.
What the hell was all that about?
I dropped some grenades back there while we ran.
Grenades?
Gnome tech grenades. They took way longer to go off than I thought. They should look into that. I may write a letter.
Where did you get gnome tech grenades? And why didn't you mention it before?
You were already mad at me about the spider.
Yes, and I still am.
I'm sorry I kicked it. I didn't think it was real.
What did you think it was? Did you think someone left a giant stuffed spider in a cave to protect their treasure?
Cooper Smith's Medieval Adventurer's Guide says giant spiders sleep so calmly that it's hard to tell if they're alive or dead. And it was dark.
Alive or dead isn't stuffed. And why kick it either way?
Hindsight's 50-50, Bob.
It doesn't matter. It's certainly dead now. But we can forget about that fancy compass Gerard hired us to find. I'm not digging back into that cave-in. Gerard will be pissed, but he knows where it is now if he wants it. If you hadn't gambled our asses away in Brandenburg, we could have ridden out of this debacle with some dignity at least.
Producing a brilliant, ornate clockwork compass the size of a quarter and holding it between his thumb and index finger.
You mean this fancy compass? How did you...
Tossing a bag to Bob.
I found it in this bag of gnome tech grenades. It was under the spider.
Trying to catch it without blowing up.
God damn it!
Without missing a beat.
Now who's glad I kicked the spider?
Neil breaks character again.
There, see? Big reveal. A magic compass. Intriguing.
Splendid. May I please continue? Time is of the essence.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, boss. Please continue.
How kind of you. Where was I? Yes, back to...
Smash to black, main titles, episode titles, superimpose, The Dragon Ruby, superimpose, Part 1, Pell, superimpose, Chapter 1, Expositionary Forces.
Okay, that was pretty sweet reveal, too.
Interior, Planeswatch Keep, sewers, night. Gannix has just finished killing 4 orcs, pig-faced monster humanoids. One makes a shriek similar to the sound we heard before jumping into the hole, as Gannix squelchily pulls his dagger out of the skull of the last one. Their mutilated bodies litter the sewer floor. He searches them for valuables and talks to the corpses. A few lit torches line the walls.
Gannix also loved to fight.
I love to fight! I just expected better.
Gannix continues searching the corpses.
And how did you get in here? I mean, I know I came in the secret way, but Don't you guys just hang out in the sewers under a dwarf-built keep on the far side of the Pell Plains? No. You were hired to be here.
Ganix finds a small purse with a few coins in it. He examines it.
You certainly weren't paid enough.
Ganix pockets the money and leans down to one of the orc's heads and makes his mouth move with his dagger.
We's got paid to protect the ruby, sire. We's had little piggy mouths to feed. Oh yeah? How did that work out? Not good, sire. No, it didn't. What else are you gonna share? The finer points of being a pig man in a human man's world? No, sire, but please maybe tell our wife and kids that we die with honor, sire. Absolutely not, pig boy. You should have chosen a different side. If I see your widowed pig widow or pig orphans, I'll kill them too. How's that?
He waits for a moment as if the dead orc would speak again, and then he pats the dead orc on the head with the flat of his dagger.
Good talk.
Ganix was also an asshole.
Ganix stands up. As he does, the torches blow out. He lights one again. It burns for a moment, then blows out again.
Oh, good. Magic sewer wind. My favorite. Well, if that's how it's gonna be.
He stuffs his hand into his magic bag. He reaches in almost to the elbow. He searches around in what seems like infinite space and finally finds what he's looking for. He pulls out a white rod of unknown material.
Two can play at that game.
He strikes the rod against the wall beside him, and the end begins to glow. It continues to cast a pale blue aura about the tunnel until everything is illuminated surprisingly well for light from a stick.
I'll see your magic wind and raise you a magic stick.
Ganix looks down at the dead orc again.
You expect me to say wand, right? Magic wind, magic wand. Life is full of disappointment. Just ask your wife and kids.
The next voiceover happens with the following action.
Ganix had entered Plainswatch Keep to find the Dragon Ruby. The ruby calls to thievers of all types. They cannot help but desire it. However, the current owner of the gem is not fond of uninvited guests, or much of anything at all, really.
He heads forward about 30 yards and then suddenly stops. He listens for a moment, then looks down. He waves the light stick, just a stick with magic light, in front of him, and the water gently rolls just a bit unevenly on the path ahead as if there were a dip in the tunnel floor.
The story goes that the Dragon Ruby was accidentally created by the gods during a particularly unhinged game of dragon poker, hence the dragon in the moniker.
Ganix tosses the light stick, absurdly thought at one time to be a wand, to the side and grabs his magic bag. Again, he reaches into it, down to the shoulder this time, until he finds what he wants. He removes a large petrified rock. He weighs it in his hand and then tosses it into the water ahead of him. It sinks.
Dragon poker is a notoriously questionable game for mortals, let alone when played by the gods themselves. It is said that 3 of the underworld's demon lords, Grub, the god of famine, Karn, the god of war, and Scab, the god of pestilence, had been playing the game for weeks on end.
Ganix counts to 5 on his fingers. As Ganix counts, the stone hits the bottom of the pit hidden in the water ahead of him. There is a click, and a huge rectangular stone drops from the ceiling into the pit, presumably smashing the stone, sealing the pit, and allowing the water to flow normally again.
The table was piled ridiculously high with an assortment of precious gems, gold, platinum, silver, and ancient magical relics that the gods had wagered throughout their game. On that fateful night, tempers flared over allegations of cheating, among other, more heinous things, and they attacked one another. They hurled their magic so carelessly that the entire world shook. This engaged nearly all the High Council of Gods, Helen, the god of chance, Bertha, the god of healing, and even Harlan, the god of order himself, to use their powers combined to end the conflict.
Ganix replaces the bag within it was closed and picks up the light stick, what only a pleb might confuse for a wand. The magic wind blows again and gives Ganix a chill. Ganix continues deeper into the sewers.
The explosion of so much god power combined tore through our dimension itself and somehow combined all of that treasure, all of that power, all of that magic into a single fist-sized gem.
Ganix stops and breaks the fourth wall again.
Don't forget about Jim.
Of course not. How could I?
Who's he talking to? This is getting confusing.
Quiet.
Fuck you.
No, not you. This is frustrating.
Tell me about it.
Ganix has made it to the end of a tunnel where the water continues flowing ahead to a grate and further into the sewer system below. But the path he walks branches off, both to the left and right, each with 3 steps down on each side, and then a turn into more darkness. He investigates both sides for more traps as the voiceover continues.
And so, the Dragon Ruby was forged. However, this dimensional tear had led to catastrophic events on our world, not the least of which were pacts that allowed access for mortals to cross over into the realms of the gods. The power that emanated from the ruby could be felt by rogues worldwide. It was as if a beacon had been lit, and every thief and cut-purse, every rapscallion and cur, every picaro and scoundrel, every ne'er-do-well and scrote, every...
They get it.
Right, sorry. Every thiever felt a deep urge inside themselves to try to find this ruby, but only one succeeded. Jim. You may know of him by his new title, Jim, the God of Thieves. That was his reward, or curse, for stealing the ruby from the gods. Of course, he hid the ruby away where it was promptly forgotten about by the gods, as they had bigger fish to fry, as they say, by dealing with their interdimensional tear and the like. So, of course, it was found and fought over for centuries until it landed in the clutches of its new owner, and thus...
After a moment of determining which way to go, Ganix walks down the stairs to the right and turns left around the corner. Here, the architecture has changed, and all along the top of the rock walls are dwarfish runes etched into the stones.
Back to me.
Ganix looks at the runes and frowns. The hallway goes about 50 feet and turns to the left again. He continues down the hall, carefully, looking at the runes and keeping an eye out for traps. He makes the turn. The hallway continues and turns to the left again. Ganix continues to walk. He makes another turn, and it is more of the same. He begins quoting something he read somewhere.
Dwarf architecture is not famed for its complexity, nor its elegance.
Ganix makes another turn and keeps going. More of the same.
Rather, it is a study in pure function, light on embellishment, and utterly devoid of...
Ganix trails off as he realizes that he's walked down the same identical corridor 5 times.
Magic. Rogue Quarterly lied.
Ganix considers going back or continuing forward. He then sprints back the way he came, but when he gets to where the steps he had descended should be, it's just another hallway with a turn again. He's been magically forced to walk in circles, or in this case, squares.
I'll be damned. Bravo, old man. Point to you.
Ganix takes a deep breath and cracks his knuckles again. He whispers a word and smacks the back of his light stick, certainly not a light wand, and it begins to over-illuminate everything, as if it were broad daylight.
Let's hope that Rogue Quarterly didn't lie about magical corridors.
Ganix begins searching the walls, especially under the dwarfish rune.
Coopersmith's Medieval Adventurer's Guide says that magical corridors are often used by powerful wizards to create mazes inside their towers. The most powerful wizards in the Western Reaches, for instance, Green Brown the Red, Adrian Moonlight the Blue, and even Kale the Black, are known to incorporate these magical constructs to keep people out of their affairs.
Ganix continues searching, high and low on both sides of the hallway.
Rogue Quarterly, however, if I remember correctly, says that while magical corridors are essentially pockets of spatial anomalies, much like bags of infinite area,
Ganix pats the bag in his belt.
Nearly all wizards allow for a button, hinge, or other sort of emergency exit of which only they know about in case they find themselves trapped inside their own creation. In truth, you need only search one single section of the magical corridor because they are all exactly...
Ganix finds the button hidden inside a particularly ugly rune depicting a dwarf guzzling 4 mugs of ale at once. The button was just under the dwarf's nose.
The same.
Ganix presses the button, and suddenly, out of the left wall, a section about 7 feet tall and 4 feet wide begins to shift back and to the left, sliding with a loud and steady grating sound, forming a doorway. Ganix readies his dagger for an ambush, but after the doorway opens, there is only silence. He glances up at the dwarfish runes again.
One of these days, I'm gonna learn that fool language. It probably tells you exactly what's going on. Dwarfs aren't exactly cunning. But why would I ever talk to a dwarf if I don't have to? Maybe to order a beer?
Suddenly, a new voice breaks in over the action.
Now wait just a fiddle damn minute! Point of order? That's racist. How dare he talk such nonsense about the noblest shortling race of them all?
Mr. Rosy Cheeks, please let me remind you that I myself am a shortling, albeit a gnome, and...
You ain't no dwarf. You think we don't have no cunning? You think we can sneak up on a bastard nor get wily when we need to?
Exterior, several hundred yards off of the road to Pembroke. Day. POV, looking through binoculars. The binoculars scan the area across the Pell Plains. They pass over someone on the road. They slow down and go back to the person.
There I was, stuck in me prey. The heat of the afternoon sweating up my beard something fierce. And me, with only enough ale to last me a couple of hours. Well, maybe one singular hours.
A click, and the binoculars zoom in on the person. It's a giant of a man, easily over 7 feet tall, grizzled, dressed like a pirate, walking down the road, leading a horse. Another click, and the binoculars zoom in on the red sash going across the pirate's chest, then over to the horse he's leading, with a large rectangular box with a tarp draped over it that is strapped to the horse's back. There is a buzzing sound, and then, exterior, several hundred yards off the road to Pembroke. Day. Grunt Rosy Cheeks, a dwarf, wearing full plate armor in the blistering sun, smacks a fly that landed on his neck. He sits cross-legged on top of a hill several hundred yards away from the pirate he was watching. He wipes profuse sweat off of his brow that runs into his long braided hair and beard.
What's an Aramorian pirate doing this far from the cove?
Grunt strums his fingers across his spiked war helmet that sits by his side. We see that his leg plates have what look like spring-loaded pistols built into them. As he wipes more sweat away, there is a glint from something on the other side of the road, toward where the pirate was heading. He raises the binoculars and looks. About 50 yards ahead of the pirate is a stretch of high grass and bushes on each side of the road. The sun is glinting off of something in the bushes. The binoculars zoom in on the hilt of a sword.
Dim fiddle's beard. Bandits.
Grunt stands and puts the binoculars on his belt. He takes a swig from a vial around his neck and wipes the sweat away one more time, puts the helmet on, and picks up a large warhammer that was resting beside him.
Time for business.
Exterior, the road to Pembroke. Day. Lobo Wolfsbane walks down the dusty road, leading his horse behind him. He sees the bandits hiding up ahead, but doesn't falter. He carries a large axe in one hand and the reins of the horse in the other. He stops for a moment to put the tricorn hat that's been hanging from a string around his neck back onto his head, then continues forward, half smiling. As Lobo makes it to the ambush, the bandits jump out to surprise him. Only his horse is surprised. These bandits wear silks and loose-fitting clothing, desert dwellers. There are 3 males and 2 females. All of the men are armed with curved scimitars that glint in the sun. One of the women stands in the road with the lead bandit, and she holds a scimitar in one hand and a curved dagger in the other. The last female bandit stands behind Lobo with a crossbow trained on him. Lobo lets the reins drop from his hand. The lead bandit flashes a winning smile and greets Lobo.
End of the line, my friend.
Here, landlubbers is a long way from the desert.
And you from the sea.
Lobo smiles, hoists his giant axe up, and gestures to the birds circling them in the sky with it, and then levels it toward the lead bandit. As he does so, the rest of the bandits encircle Lobo.
Fine group we all be. And our Amorian and his 5 new Balarian friends standing here on the open plains. Just us and the scavenger kites flying above.
I am afraid, my new friend, that we require your possessions. We are but poor itinerant folk who must supplement ourselves by what means we may. I'm sure you understand.
Lobo chuckles and takes a 2-handed grip on his axe.
Well, there we do have a problem, matey. Me possessions and I are required elsewhere.
The lead bandit laughs and gestures around them.
You are surrounded, my friend. You cannot hope to defeat us all.
I reckon I'll just have to start with you and see what happens next.
Salty to the last. Spoken like a true pirate. I like you, my friend. Barrage?
He gestures to the bandit with the crossbow.
Shoot him.
As the bandit with the crossbow prepares to fire, a shot rings out and the bandit's chest explodes, throwing her to the ground. Everyone wheels on where the shot came from, and Grunt bursts out of the tall grass, a smoldering flintlock pistol in his right hand.
Have at you, bastards!
Grunt slaps his left leg plate and another flintlock springs forth and flips up into his left hand. He shoots one of the male bandits and then tosses the empty weapons to the ground.
Great Sapphirine!
The lead bandit, visibly shaken, glances worriedly at the 2 remaining bandits and stumbles backward. The female bandit with the 2 weapons charges Lobo. Lobo catches her scimitar with the wooden haft of his axe, but she deftly slices across his chest with her curved dagger. It barely misses, slashing open Lobo's shirt. Lobo uses the leverage of her stuck scimitar to throw her backward, but she parlays that into a somersault and lands prepared to attack again. The other male bandit charges Grunt. Grunt dives into a roll, going under the swinging blade of the bandit and pulling his hammer from his side. As the bandit readjusts, Grunt flings the hammer end over end into the chest of the bandit, sending him flying into the air and landing with a sickening thud several feet away, dead. The last female bandit again goes on the offensive to Lobo with a flurry of both of her weapons. He parries a few, but this time she splits the haft of his axe in two, and she lands on top of him, her dagger at Lobo's throat.
Halt!
The lead bandit points his weapon at Grunt, who is moving toward the downed Lobo. Grunt growls and stops moving. Lobo moves his neck under the female bandit's blade and swallows. He drops both pieces of his axe out of his hand. Above, a scavenger kite shrieks as it flies over them, waiting to feast on the carnage.
It appears, once again, my friend, that we have you at
Another gunshot blast, and the female bandit's head explodes. Her body falls off of Lobo. Lobo and the lead bandit blink at one another, then look toward Grunt. The dwarf stands with a third, smaller pistol, smoke rising from the barrel.
Back holster.
The lead bandit slowly walks backward away from them.
Gentlemen, I bid you good day.
With that, the lead bandit turns and runs as fast as he can into the tall grass of the Pell Plains. Lobo sits up as they watch the bandit run. He runs a long way, to a caravan, where he jumps on board and drives away down another path of the dusty road to Pembroke. Lobo and Grunt look at each other and shrug. Interior, Plainswatch Keep, night. Gannick stands in front of the doorway with his arms folded, waiting for the story to be over.
Are you quite finished? I'm trying to tell you the story of Ganix and the Dragon Ruby so that you may leave here and commence on your quest, knowing what you may face. Every time I am interrupted, precious time is wasted.
Time is of the essence.
Time is of the goddamned essence.
Fair is fair. We're important too, you dumb bastard. And I won't hear no racist shite.
Is that a bit to drink in? I think you can finish your story, mate.
Onward.
Ganix takes a few steps toward the doorway and smacks the end with his light stick. Never a light wand. Again, relegating it back to normal light again, and he steps through the doorway. The room in front of him is very small, about 10 feet squared. In the center is a small table. In the back left corner, there are several bags of grain where more dwarfish markings on them. And on the other side of the room, a large barrel.
Really? This isn't fooling anyone.
Ganix reaches deep into his bag of infinite area and pulls out a glass sphere. He holds it in his left hand and puts the light stick, what do we know it isn't, to the other end to shine through it. As soon as he does, the walls of the room start to shimmer.
Illusory magic 2. You've got giant brass balls. Even casting illusions like this in the Pell District, old man. Constable Kriegel would string you up for trying to mess with other people's brains like this. I may not agree on much with that arrogant prick lawman, but illusions are bullshit.
Upon Ganix's mind understanding that the illusion magic wasn't real, the walls of the room shimmer and then disappear, making the room about 4 times as large and much more like a mad scientist's laboratory.
There we go. That's more like it.
Ganix replaces the sphere in his bag and looks around. To the left are tables and bookshelves filled with books, papers, and what look to be terrible experiments. To the right stands an alchemist table, complete with bubbling potions, oils, and elixirs. In the center, on the back wall, a large mirror hangs. But the mirror doesn't show Ganix's reflection. Instead, it shows a grand chamber draped with black tapestries and adorned at the far end by an imposing obsidian throne. Directly under the mirror sits a very large iron-bound chest. Ganix pushes the table out of the way and heads directly for the chest. He kneels in front of it, once again cracking his knuckles and smiling.
Gold.
Ganix opens the overly large chest, only to find another large but smaller chest inside, held tightly in place by gold coins. He pulls that chest out of the gold, closes the first chest, and sits it on top. As Ganix examines the chest, he notices 3 ominously placed iron talismans across the front side along the lip. The left talisman is in the likeness of Grub, the god of famine, a pig-nosed orc with emeralds for eyes and its tusks made of ivory. The central talisman is the lupine visage of Karn, the god of war. The wolf face in mid-howl has onyx eyes staring at an opal moon. And the right talisman has been crafted to look like a rodent. Scab, the god of pestilence. Sapphire eyes grinning a razor-toothed greeting. Their eyes seem illuminated.
Grub, Karn, and Scab? Subtle, Kale. Really. 3 demon gods of the underworld, and all I got was this lousy box of treasure.
Gannick studies the center talisman a moment and notices 3 tiny keyholes in Karn's open, howling mouth.
Wonderful.
Gannick sits his light stick, very different than a light wand, down beside him, flicks his right wrist, and a set of lockpicks drop into the palm of his left hand. He gives the chest another once-over, and then begins to work on the locks.
Rogue Quarterly says lockpicking is a tricky business. For all of Gannick's completely unmatched roguish abilities, from thieving to burgling, stealth to acrobatics, disguise to swordplay, trap-busting to card-sharking, picking locks is the only skill he never refined to a level of satisfaction. Sure, he could probably outpick 98 out of any 100 thieves in the Western Reaches, but even he still felt like he was somewhat lacking in this most crucial of larcenous endeavors.
Gannick stops, annoyed, listening to the voiceover.
Anyone else have commentary before we finish this thing?
Silence. Then a new voice clears his throat.
Absolutely not! We do not have...
Interior, the bristly pig, Devon, a handsome young rogue, sits alone in a corner booth of a tavern a la Strider in Lord of the Rings. A loud game of dragon poker is being played near him. He reads a Rogue Quarterly magazine. He suddenly realizes that the camera is watching him expectantly.
Wait. What the? How do you even know I'm a thief?
These voiceovers overlap, ending with Gerard.
You look like
There is no doubt at all.
Devon frowns and looks around.
I was here in the Bristly Pig most of the day. My journey to get here was basically just leaving my house and walking 2 blocks. So maybe don't be mean. I did lock myself out of the house though. So if this story can help me with that, I'm all ears.
Truly, a worthy interruption.
Devon shrugs and goes back to the magazine. Interior, Plainswatch Keep, night. Gannick makes a wide-eyed sigh and shakes his head. He works a bit more on the lock. As he finishes, there is a small click, and Grubb's eyes seem to dim.
1. Well, why didn't you listen to old Porter Mullins when he said you should take up needlepoint to help you refine your lockpicking abilities and improve your general dexterity? I tried that. I made several very nice shawls. But it made no discernible difference in my lockpicking, which is why I left old Porter Mullins stranded in a frozen pass in the big mountains with only a sack full of dry rations and a single knitting needle.
The second tumbler falls, and Scab's eyes lose their light. He continues working.
The truth was, in all the world, no thief is perfect. Even the fabled Jim be praised, who ascended to godhood after pulling the grandest heist in recorded history, was said to be pretty shitty with a rapier. That's why, after obsessing over his aptitude with locks for many years, Gannick acquiesced and instead chose to hire professional pickers to accompany him whenever those needs arose. But this job, well, he had no such luxury here. Vendettas are better worked out alone.
Gannick works, holding his breath for the final moments. Then there is a very audible click. Nothing happens. Then the third tumbler falls into place, and the lid opens just slightly. However, Karn's eyes continue to glow. Gannick notices it and narrows his eyes.
Well, today's a good day for it. I've made my peace.
Gannick opens the chest. A haze of scarlet washes over his face as the lid falls back to reveal the largest gem he has ever seen, an exquisitely lustrous and perfectly worked ruby. The stone has been cut to display 20 identical sides, an icosahedron. This is the dragon ruby. Gannick stares into its depths. For a moment, he feels a rightness in his soul that had long been lacking. A genuine, heartfelt smile crosses his face.
I found you.
What a heartwarming story, little fella. So now we just have to find this master thief and get that ruby, eh? Easy peasy.
Gannick holds the dragon ruby in his hands, basking in the scarlet glow of the gem. Behind and around the base of the gem's pillow are coins and other gems, and a dwarf-cracked sword hanging from metal hooks across the back of the chest. Marvelous, isn't it?
Ganix pivots on his heels and spins to face the enemy behind him, while at the same time whisking the ruby into the folds of his cloak and drawing his dirk in one fluid motion. In the stone doorway stands a thin man of average height wearing black robes. The lines of the man's face and the gray in his thinning hair betray his age, but Ganix notices the cold spark behind his eyes that spoke to some kind of arcane vitality and a deep, perhaps not entirely human, malevolence. Behind the man, the hallways seemed wreathed in fire, and Ganix could smell brimstone.
Kale.
Hello, Ganix.
Oh, fuck.
You can say that again.
Oh, fuck.
Silence!
Kale nods to Ganix.
I suppose if I am to be burgled, it should be by a thief of your stature.
Who said anything about burgling?
Pretense. I know, Ganix. I'm afraid I can't sympathize, but I know of your compulsion. The dragon ruby,
pointing to where Ganix stashed the ruby in his cloak,
calls to all of your ilk, and you cannot choose but to pursue it.
I'm not sure I like the way you say ilk.
Regardless, I must ask you to place the gem into the chest and leave now. The ruby is far too powerful a thing to fall into unscrupulous hands. Out of respect for your work, I offer you this singular chance. Otherwise, my hounds will feast well tonight.
A low growl issues from behind the dark wizard, and Ganix catches sight of a pair of fiery red eyes amid the smoke rising from behind the passage.
Did you offer the same when you had Timo filch it from the marmoset? Because that's not something even I would have done. You made a worse enemy than me that day, my friend. In his day, short of Dragon Snort, there isn't anyone I would want to tangle with less.
In his day, the offer still stands. Please take it.
Well, you know I would, Kale, but my ilk and I have been after the Dragon Ruby for quite some time. Owner after owner, dungeon after dungeon. As the great Jim says, ain't nothing belong to no man for good. And I mean no offense to your magical wizardliness, but you've had it long enough.
Hardly. And you can thank your late father's no good friends for that.
Ganix changes the grip on his dirk and snarls.
Leave him out of this, wizard.
It is out of respect for the duty he once performed for me that I have let you live as long as you have. But I warn you, my patience has its limits.
Well, you must know,
sliding his other hand behind his back to another concealed dagger,
that my brethren and I are bound to seek what you've unrightfully claimed. You may get the better of me, and I don't think you will, but there will always be another thief just waiting for a chance at the ruby. World's fairly crawling with us, I'd wager. You could thank Big Jim for that.
Choose your words carefully, or you will die with your precious ruby in your hand.
Actually, it's in my cloak.
Ganix gives Kale a wink. Kale sighs.
You've had your chance, Ganix, and now your gin-damned sarcasm will be the end of you.
Ganix yells and springs forward like a clock in the springtime and flings the dagger at his opponent's torso. But even as he moves, his heart sinks as he sees the electricity pulsating through Kale's fingertips. A flash of lightning screams out between the two men, its brilliance dancing about the room like Nikola Tesla at a rave. The furious bolt of lightning courses through Ganix's dagger, disintegrating it, and lancing unbelievably through Ganix's chest. The smell of burnt flesh erupts from Ganix's nostrils as he smells his insides cauterize. As his body falls forward onto the cold stone, he makes one last plea to the god of thieves. You must have been in the bathroom at the time.
Oh, Jim. Please?
Ganix's body hits the floor. For a moment, all is silent. Then Kale takes 2 deliberate steps forward and kicks Ganix's corpse to make sure he's dead. Satisfied, Kale closes his eyes, inclines his head to the ceiling, and begins to utter a dark, forbidden spell. We don't hear the words, but we see the results. Ganix's body begins to shake. His mouth falls open, expelling a rattling breath, and a brilliant green bubble floats out from between his lips. The bubble rises slowly through the air, hovering between the dead and the living men, as if awaiting instruction. Kale opens his eyes. He extends his index finger and points to the chest with the sword mounted in it. The green bubble wavers, descends, and then hovers above the hilt. Kale mutters a final word and snaps his fingers, and the bubble drops into the sword with the lingering echo of a faraway scream. Then the small flash of light, and the sword shines from the chest with what seems to be an exquisite emerald now embedded in the hilt. The growls re-emerge from behind Kale.
Feast, hounds.
2 fiery dogs brush their way past Kale, their flames flickering toward but not burning him. They circle Ganix's corpse. He snaps his fingers again, and Ganix's cloak begins to move as the dragon ruby rises up from it and moves into Kale's waiting hand.
Yes, feast, but know that his soul belongs to me.
The emerald in the hilt of the sword shines brightly as it picks up the hellhound's fire, and the dogs clean up the mess that was Ganix. Fade to black. Then...
What the fuck?
Interior, the bristly pig, evening. Bob, Neil, Grunt, Lobo, and Devin sit across from Gerard, the fire still burning in the fireplace behind them. They are all in various states of shock.
Do you understand the stakes now?
The main guy dies? What the hell, man? You made us care about the dude the entire time only to kill him at the end?
Brutal. And the actual big bad is the cruelest dark wizard of the 7 corn-blasted kingdoms.
Precisely.
I didn't like it much anyway.
You can't pay us enough to...
1,000 crowns each plus expenses?
Sure, we'll do it.
This is all very frightening to me, but I feel compelled.
Thief.
Devin frowns.
Do we have a compact now that you know the score?
There's a tense moment as we go close in on each of our heroes' faces. Bob and Neil look at each other and shrug. Grunt blows bubbles in his brew. Lobo slowly nods. Devin sees everyone else's reactions and looks back to Gerard.
We're in!
Gerard smiles and then someone starts to slow clap. It's the bar mistress.
That was great. Really. So much lore and action and adventure. Pomp and circumstance. Now who's paying for all this shit?
Yes! Gerard sighs. Smash to black and titles again. Big end music. Superimpose the Dragon Ruby, written by T. Michael Murdock. Credits. The end.
We'll take it all together as a team. Mike, which actor do you want to yell at first? What do you have to say after hearing it the first time or the second time?
What do you have to say for yourself? No, I'm very pleased. I continue to draw circles in places that I'm unhappy with as I listen to it and go through it. But for a 6th draft, it's all right. Yeah, I think. I think the biggest note that I got at the end as turning this in for a final was that this seems like episode 4 because everybody in the class and the teacher wanted me to tell Bob and Neil's story first, wanted to tell the story of everybody getting to the bar, and I wanted to tell everybody's story while I was telling this other story. So I tried to combine all of that stuff, and for some people that didn't work. And it's one of the things that I condensed from the hour-long version into the half-hour was, in the hour-long, it literally starts with, they're basically the same way, but there's the Bob and Neil scene is much longer, and then the Grunt and Lobo scene is much longer, and then there's a Devin, Devin has his own scene, and they all eventually get to the bar, but it's way, 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 way longer, and there's 50 more, you meet Kriegel, you meet Kale long before the sort of reveal of him at the end, and so there's a bunch of that sort of business. But I wanted to make this more about the Dragon Ruby itself and set the stakes up for what the Dragon Ruby was. And I felt like if this was how the show starts, then episode 1 we'd go back to Bob and Neil and the spider at the beginning and literally tell that story. Episode 2 is telling Bob and Neil's story and getting them to the bar. And then Lobo and Grunt getting to the bar, and then we all get to the bar, and by halfway, they still don't go on the quest until halfway through the season. Once everybody finally gets to the bar, and then we actually go and cause some havoc. So
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I'm not a screenwriter in any way, so your class play is better. But I mean, I like the way it does it. It's about the dragon, really. I mean, I think you do a great. It's very engaging, and then as you find out that the different characters that they're the ones sitting in the box, I think it works really well.
Simon is someone. Simon, Nora, John Armstrong is people who've read the book. Do you remember the book? Have you read it recently enough to compare the properties? Because Simon and I had a discussion, I think was it Wednesday, about if we start here, then it was different. So how did it come out different to you, Simon?
Well, I think, let me preface by saying the book sucks you in. It moves quick, but the beginning was a little slow, and I think this fixed it real nice. You know, like you got to introduce everybody. There's a lot of characters. Some characters who may seem like they're dead. Spoiler alert. Might come back later. You know, so you're introducing all the characters.
One of the orcs.
And you're not taking.
that whole family.
You're not taking too long to do it. And I think this is good. I think it's better, especially in the context of the full story. I think this is a good intro.
I should say for the folks that the majority of people that don't know anything about the book, which is there's no reason why you would. The prelude of chapter 1, the prelude of the entire novel is the Ganix story. Like it's Ganix breaking into this place, finding the ruby, and being killed by Cable. Like that's its own sort of short story at the beginning of the book, and then chapter 1 starts with Bob and Neil like doing their stuff, and so this was me trying to sort of weave that all together. I love the idea of seemingly killing off a main character like right away. Like I wanted to Ned Stark somebody like right off the rip.
Before Ned Stark.
Yeah, long before
George
Ned
R.
Stark.
Martin stole it.
Yeah, because this book was written 30 years ago. So I like that idea, and the fact that he isn't really dead. Like he's trapped in this sword now, and so the idea moving forward through this. What I also had to do for the class was I had to write the entire series, like the series Bible for the first season, and have what happens in each of the episodes moving forward. And I did like 12 episodes, 12 half-hour episodes or something. And so like the idea moving forward is that Ganix is cursed in this sword, and Devon gets the sword. Devon, who is this terrible level 1 thief, as it were, and then suddenly has like this brilliant thief cursed to him, talking in his head all the time about what he should do and what he shouldn't do, and is exasperated that he has to deal with Devon, and Devon is exasperated that he has to deal with this guy that is clearly way better than he is at everything. And so that's sort of where that moves forward. But
I think in terms of the story itself, having read the book and now the pilot, one of the difficult things in the adaptation is in the book, there isn't one main character, right? Like it's a very ensemble kind of story, right? And I think that's difficult to put into a television show, right? But I think that the device that you use sets it up nicely. That I think maybe y'all can say we're invested in like each of the characters and each of their stories, and we kind of care about like all of them together as a group, rather than just focusing on one or two protagonists.
it's interesting too, because I got into a lot of trouble writing the Ganix stuff by itself, because he's by himself, and so there's no one for him to talk to unless he's talking to himself. Which is why I kept one of the moments from the hour long, which is him like mouth talking with the orc that he killed. And I have him do that sort of multiple times throughout his thing, because in the hour long there is no voiceover. It's just we keep cutting back to Ganix doing the stuff, and then we cut away to something else, and then cut back to Ganix continuing his trek through the sewers, and they were like, how are you going to justify having a character that doesn't talk for that long constantly in a thing. And I was like, well, he's narcissistic enough that he would talk to himself, I guess. So I thought about that, and then I, when you're adapting a thing that's your own, you need to get away from being super precious about it, because I'm like, no, it has to be this way because that's how I wrote it in the book, or that's when Herschel and I put this together. This is the way it was supposed to be, and then it doesn't really work as well when you're watching it, and so you have to move things around, and you're like, yeah, but if I do that, and that changes this 10 chapters later, and I don't know how I'm going to do that, and so trying to keep it fresh and different, and at the same time, sort of, it's almost more homage to the book at this point than it is to anything else at this point. And I promise there are female characters later. I do want to point that out. But yeah, so
I'm gonna ask the question that we often ask in talkbacks. Did everything make sense, or is there something that popped out that didn't make sense? Dr. Brewster, is that your hand?
I love the premise. I think the characters were great. I don't always love a breaking of the fourth wall, but this really worked. Like Gerard, the interaction worked with everybody. In terms of world building, Grunt having guns was weird to me. Like it to me that didn't ring. And then also, Cindy and I both said that when Ganex is talking, I guess, to himself about why didn't I just learn needlepoint to be a better lock picker? And then there's a comment about like, all I made was this shawl. You wouldn't make a shawl with needlepoint. Like that's just not the craft. It's not the art. You could make a decorative pillow, right? There are things to make with needlepoint, but it wouldn't be a shawl. But the gun and maybe the binoculars. You could maybe make an argument for why binoculars would exist in this world building with like orcs and magical bags and whatnot.
So the grenades are fine.
They were less than the gun.
To speak to that, I can answer that in a very succinct world way in this story. Gnomes are a tech race in the book. And it's not spoken of here, so there's no way for anybody to know that. Other than we call things gnome tech, and that's why I call them gnome tech grenades, gnome whatever. We try to get the idea that gnomes are tinkerers and deal with tech a lot. So anything that is like that, like like the pistols and the grenades and stuff like that, and binoculars even, anything that is sort of steampunky type style stuff is all developed by the gnome culture throughout the book, so that's just not explained here.
And I'll say in defense of that too. That's a pretty common, like gnomes, maybe goblins, like those types are like Warcraft, Dungeons and Dragons. Those all have rudimentary guns, explosives, that kind of thing, and then like baked into a sort of like very early sort of magical gunpowder age.
Usually very unreliable.
Yes.
Yeah. Like gnome guns are the blunderbusses that just explode in your face.
Yeah.
There's a whole bit, and it's actually in the hour-long episode where there's the whole city of gnomes is Pelagnor, and that's why they're in the Pel Plains. Pelagnor is the city in the whatever, and they're building it. The gnomes are building a teleportation device that will allow Kale and his people to travel from the Isle of Dark to the Pel Plains and back and forth. And so one of the big things that they're building is this like interdimensional portal thing that is literally built out of technology. So that comes into more play later. But
Is it a portal or a conduit?
It's certainly not. It's certainly not talked about in this at all, which is a very valid point. And I obviously know nothing about needlepoint.
I liked how Gerald is the one that is narrating everything, considering he's the one that commissions everyone to go out to find, the Dragon Ruby and of course other things. So I like that part. But the one question I didn't have that I liked in the book was Lobo has an Islander.
Yes, very Jamaican.
Yeah, very Jamaican. And then it's not until, sorry, spoiler, but it's not until later that you find out that he's a pirate. So why did you choose to have him as a pirate first and then instead of having him as an island,
Because he's white.
Because we can't cast that.
It's racist.
Racist.
Oh, wow. That's racist?
The Islander patois in there, but
It's written.
I'm not.
Yeah.
The dialect is written that way. Like it's written with the Mons and the very sort of Jamaican Islander type thing. Because Aramore, where he's from, is an island, and I just thought it would probably be real bad to do that.
I would have liked it.
I do have one question, and then I'll let Mike Nagley answer the question. You're taking school for this, and so I don't know if this is a thing that's done. The wit in the stage direction, the jokes in the stage direction, is that a thing that's done? Is that because I don't know that answer. And I found it interesting because I didn't know if it was done or not.
Yes, I urge. One of the other things we did in this class is we had to read a TV pilot every week and discuss it and talk about it and then watch it and see the differences in the original pilot and the script and stuff. And, it depends on the writer, but there are a lot of what they tell you is in your stage directions, they determine the tone of your piece, and if you're writing something funny, then that helps them get closer to the world, and so that's what I was trying to do.
Cool. I didn't know that. That's cool. Mike.
So the way they all meet in the book with the bristly pig and there's a big mistaken identity kind of subplot with the echoes and all that. Do you plan to have that storyline in there, or was that too much?
It's in the hour. That's another thing that I cut out of the hour-long pilot. There's Gerard has already hired 2 swordsmen that are constantly are very, very deadly swordsmen that everybody thinks are Bob and Neil later, because these 2 guys as soon as they talk about them forever and about how deadly they are and how whatever, and they immediately walk into this bar and basically immediately die. And
just bizarre happenstance.
Yeah, it's in a very Rube Goldbergian kind of falling on their own sword, is slipping on blood. It's a whole thing.
Literally.
And then from that point on, because they have these sort of special swords, Bob and Neil take these swords, and so everybody thinks that Bob and Neil are these guys from that point on. And so, that's just another thing that ended up on the chopping block that would come back probably later in these episodes, because once they're all together at the Bristly Pig, all that stuff has already happened. So it's all stuff that, in episode 2 or 3, when we're doing the Bob and Neil actually get to the Bristly Pig or whatever, we could actually tell that story. Because in that same, there's a big poker game that happens where Lobo loses his piracy status, and there's a whole thing. So
That whole bit in the Bristly Pig is probably one of my favorite.
well, the problem is it's a whole damn season worth of shit. As they kept saying, it was your whole is it about the Dragon Ruby and them trying to find the Dragon Ruby, or is it about this poker game, or is it about who is it really about? And they kept trying to force me to not make it ensemble, and you keep saying that Bob and Neil are the protagonists, so it needs to be about Bob and Neil. Which I get, I understand that idea, but I can't. It's very difficult for me to not sort of expand that out, and so that was what I was fighting against.
Well, I like that device. I like that device in anything. The very first opening episode of Breaking Bad just has you from the beginning, because they go to the interesting shit off the bat, and then they just rearrange the way it's told, and that way you care about these characters more as you watch them. Now I can watch them just sitting at a bus stop. On episode 3 or 4, I can sit there and watch them do anything.
It's one of
because now I'm already invested.
Yeah, it's one of the things that when Fox ruined Firefly. But the 4th episode of Firefly, I think, is where everybody gets together on Serenity, and it's that's the explanation episode of how they all got there. And because the first episode, they're in it, they're in the chase like right off the bat, and you're like, who are these people? What are they doing? What is the heist that they're in the middle of? Which is great, but was never intended to be that way. And so but by stealing that bad idea that happened to sort of, that didn't pan out for that show necessarily, but I like that idea of like, get to know the characters through the actions, and then hopefully you care about the characters enough to know more about them, how they got there, and what brought them into the pig to begin with to go on this quest. Because Bob and Neil clearly are already working for Gerard.
I'm very curious about Brett.
We'll do one last question over here, and then feel free to harass Mike Murdock after we get done as much as you want. What do you?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, is like the specific bar, is that like a convening like space that happens a lot throughout the plot?
Like going back to that specific bar?
Yeah, I just didn't know if that was like a place that was
like Cheers.
or like Friends.
It's sort of the central hub for the first quarter to half of the book, I think. It's sort of in the main city, so it's like those are the main go-to spots where everybody knows, and so they all end up meeting there, either on purpose or accidentally, and they keep coming back to it. Typically, especially with like Dungeons and Dragons type fantasy type stuff, there's always some kind of tavern someplace that in every town that adventurers have to sleep so they can get their well rested XP, and that's sort of it. And
where else are you gonna find it?
And at this point, it's like a bar that Gerard owns, so it's it's his place. And
thank you guys so much for being here. That was the Dragon Ruby by. Thank you guys. We'll be here tomorrow at 2:30 if you want to see a play and then write some. We're going to have a good time. It's a lot of fun. We'll be back in this space, I think, and then we'll split up and write some. And come and see the Crucible and all kinds of other things. And check out our website and all that stuff. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.